Okay.
Welcome to the December meeting of the Manhattan City on Transportation and Street Activity Permit Committee. And I'd like to welcome Scott Palmer, who is here, District Manager, and my co-chair, Jess Coleman. We have Tammy Meltzer, the City One Chairman. as well. So we have a pretty full agenda. We want to go on to the first slide. We'll see there are 3 items tonight. Back of all that's it.
Just give me a minute.
We can have our speakers come sit at the table and we can.
Yes, from the speakers, these owls have the microphone and the camera. They will switch to you wherever you are, either of the owls. So whether you stand or sit, doesn't matter. Just know what you're speaking to.
So TLC wants to come to the table.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely, join us.
Sit the same one.
You can sit there, you can sit over there.
Separate you a little bit. Yeah, it's okay.
The camera will pick both of you up, so it's not a problem, but at least this way, people who are online are able to hear to a greater extent. And then just for a reminder for everybody in the room, if you talk behind me, you can still hear me.
It not only hears you, but then also it mutes the people online, so then like they can't hear.
It becomes one big blow. So I'm going to ask, because you can see there are a lot of people that are speaking tonight, you'd introduce yourself and your affiliation when your item comes up. The TLC, some fairness, will wait until I can go.
Okay. Good, slides are up.
Thank you, yes. Dennis, the TLC would like to go on.
Yeah, of course. Did you want to pull up the presentation I sent you, or should I?
Yeah, I think you,
I integrated both sets of slides back into the same sets, so it should be all continuous.
So we're ready to go.
You can use this to
Change the slide.
yeah, large
Pointer.
button advances.
Advances, okay.
And then if you want to point, just hold that.
Oh, that, all right, perfect. So, hello, everyone. My name is David Renz. Joined here by my colleague Dylan Cepeda. We're from the Taxi and Limousine Commission. Wanted to give you a brief presentation covering kind of what the TLC does. And yeah, we'll get started. So we can have it. So, we're going to the next slide. So the Taxi and Limousine Commission, we were founded in 1971. We're the governmental city agency responsible for licensing and regulating the city's yellow cabs, green taxis, or hire vehicles, paratransit vehicles, and commuter vans. And we're gonna first get started with the type of vehicles that we license. So, of course, the first one I'm gonna go over is, the iconic yellow taxis, medallions, so to speak. They run off of a standard metered rate. And they are able to accept legal street hails anywhere within the 5 boroughs. As we've advanced, there are actually mobile apps where you can now also order yellow cabs to your location. We have some of them listed here. Curb and Arrow are probably the 2 biggest apps that people use to hail cabs. And we like to remind passengers, always remember to get a receipt if you use a yellow cab. Try to remember it that way. We'll go over like lost property later, but that way we know the cab you were in, if there's ever an issue, and that's a lot easier for us to track it and find out information about the ride you took. Next, we have the green taxis. Maybe not seen too much in Manhattan. We are way downtown here, but they are similar to the yellow taxis. They do run on a standard metered rate. The same e-hail apps are available for green cabs. However, they are excluded from picking up passengers south of 96th Street on the east side, and I believe it's south of 110th Street on the west side. They also are not allowed to do pickups at the airport, but they're a good option for the outer boroughs. If you're ever out there, you see a green cab, you know that it's a standard metered rate, and they will take you where you need to go. What's the most popular, most licensed vehicles are our for-hire vehicles. So they include black cars, liveries, and your local bases. Of course, predominantly they're used for Uber and Lyfts. They're easily identified by the TLC plate. You know, most of their plates begin with a T and with a C. You can easily identify that as one of our licensed vehicles, and we strongly discourage ever getting into a car that, you know, you don't know is licensed by TLC. If they're offering you a ride, not licensed, and they also cannot accept street hail. So even if it's a licensed vehicle with the TLC plates, they are not allowed to accept street hails. The ride has to be booked through a licensed base, or an e-hail app such as Uber and Lyft. And finally, we do have commuter vans. There are very few commuter vans left in the city, but they service the outer boroughs. They have set routes with their fares set by a commuter van committee. The vehicles can easily be identified by the C on the side of the van, so that way you know it is an actual licensed commuter van. You know, if you are in the outer boroughs, there are several unlicensed vehicles. We strongly discourage taking them. They oftentimes are not licensed and don't cover insurance. And that was, you know, a brief overview of the vehicles we license and regulate. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Dylan, who's going to go over some rights as passengers and go over how to file complaints with our agency.
Okay, yeah, thank you, David. So we're gonna go over how to protect your rights as a passenger when riding licensed vehicles, and also some of the common issues and complaints we hear at the agency. So first, accessibility is a top priority at TLC. So there are a number of ways that you can request an accessible vehicle. We have the accessible dispatch system. So you can access that line through that link by calling that number or calling 311. And you'll get an accessible yellow taxi or green taxi to your location, similar to like an e-hail. There's the actual e-hail apps you can download, like David mentioned, Curb and Arrow. You can also request an accessible vehicle, and then through your local FHV base or through other apps like Uber Lyft, you can also request accessible vehicles. Right. So when you take a vehicle, accessible or non-accessible, you have rights when you get into the vehicle. You can view the full list on our agency's website, but here are some of the common themes in each of the Bill of Rights for passengers. Not to be refused service based on a protected class, which we'll get into a little bit on the next slide. To be driven by a licensed driver who's in good standing, a driver who drives safely, obeys all the traffic laws in the city, a vehicle that's clean, and a vehicle that has all working safety equipment. So these are the categories that, so there's a number of categories that it's illegal to discriminate when you try to hail a ride. So a driver cannot refuse you for these protected classes: race, destination, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, immigration status, national origin, religion, creed, color, marital or partnership status, or pregnancy. So if you're ever refused a ride based on any of these categories, definitely report it to us through 311, which you can do over the phone, online, or through the app. And what happens is that after you make a report as a complaint, it goes to our prosecution department, where an attorney will review the case and call you back if they need any other additional information, and then it may go to a hearing. There's a limited amount of reasons why a driver could refuse you service. But if you're ever unsure, just make the complaint and we will sort it out. Okay, now we're going to move toward some of the common issues that we see at the agency. A lot of people contact us for lost items. So if you lose an item in a yellow or green taxi, we're actually able to track that. So if you call into 311 or make an online complaint, we'll actually get back to you and try to track that item and track the cab and where it's been. It's a little different if you're in an Uber, Lyft, or a for-hire vehicle. You actually have to contact the base or the company directly, and they'll help you out with that. But you want to make sure that you provide as much information as you remember. That's why it's important to take the receipt. That way we can find the vehicle and try to find your information. So we can look there. You can also, if you want, try the lost property precincts. There's a number of them in each borough. For Manhattan, the closest one is the 17th precinct, uptown. But it'll depend on where your ride was. The driver may have dropped off your property at the closest precinct. And then we'll take a look at overcharges, another common complaint that we get. Like David said, taxis, yellow taxis, green taxis have to charge the metered fare, and there's a full breakdown on our website. Different conditions apply, if you're going to different destinations, such as the airport, or to outside of the city, such as Nassau County or Westchester County. So you can be charged a different rate. You can take a look at that. And if you ever feel you've been overcharged, you can contact 311 again, and the same process will apply. The complaint will go to our prosecution department. One of our attorneys will take a look at the issue. And if you ever need a copy of a receipt, or you want to know some information, detailed information that's not public about TLC, you can always make a FOIL complaint. And so that's the end of our presentation. We're both from the Community Affairs Unit at TLC, and our contact information is right there. If you ever want to shoot us an email, there's also a more detailed list of frequently asked questions for passengers on our website, which is on that link there.
And the last one I wanted to talk about, not in the presentation, kind of a TLC policy that public might not be aware of, but the TLC did recently implement, we call it our Green Rides Initiative. And that's our goal, to dispatch a lot of vehicles to electric, to cut down on emissions. It applies to the high volume for higher paces. Just simply put, that's Uber and Lyft. They actually do have, without getting too far into the weeds, a special designation as a base. And it is our goal, well, it's going to be mandated that by 2030, all the for hire vehicle bases, so Ubers and Lyft, will have to dispatch to electric vehicles. Right now, we're about at 11% of vehicles being dispatched through electric vehicles with Uber and Lyft, and the threshold is going to continue to go up as the years go on. It's going to hit certain thresholds they have to meet, and the vehicles will have to be electric or wheelchair accessible vehicles.
Or
Wheelchair accessible vehicles.
not M.
Yeah, right now, there's no fully electric wheelchair accessible vehicles on the market.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can't blame a girl for asking.
Yeah, I have some questions, I have some things to add, but does anybody else have comments they want to make? I'll take you first.
Actually, a question. So when you talk about like, the 11% electric for hire vehicles, and the goal is to go 100% for hire, does that mean you're going to demand that for hire vehicles, Uber and Lyft drivers, switch the automobile they're driving now to electric? Or does that mean pouring a bunch more cars onto the streets that are already crowded?
So we do have, the FHV license clause has been in effect since 2018. There was a brief period where we did accept electric vehicles, but right now, as it stands, the only way to get TLC plates would be for a wheelchair accessible vehicle. So what we are assuming is that as drivers who currently have electric vehicles, say they want to drive for Uber, that currently have gas vehicles. If they want to drive for Uber and Lyft, they would have to switch over to an electric.
Right, so answer me this, it doesn't mean that you're going to like add another 100,000 cars to the fleet.
Unless in the theoretical situation that 100,000 people apply for an electric vehicle, wave license.
Yeah.
But yes, as we stand now, you cannot get TLC plates with a gas vehicle.
But you can get TLC plates with an electric vehicle.
Wheelchair accessible. We stopped issuing plates for electric vehicles.
And also, that's also under quarter.
Well, we passed the rules, the court order, so without getting too far into the weeds, what the court order happened was we started issuing plates for electric vehicles. NYTSWA, which is a big taxi union, sued us, and yes, there was a court mandate that said we have to stop issuing all plates. Well, electric plates. We can still issue plates for wheelchair accessible vehicles. And we still do.
Only wheelchair.
Only wheelchair. The only way you're getting a TLC plate is with a wheelchair accessible vehicle.
Because there aren't enough that are wheelchair accessible was the decision.
Hands. Definitely on that.
One last follow-up. When you compare the number of for hire vehicles to the number of medallion vehicles, is it apples and oranges? How many, do you know?
Off the top of my head, I believe there's about 100,000 FHVs on the road. There are I would say around 13,000 medallions, and about half of them are in service. There's a lot of medallions in storage.
And what are you doing to, alleviate some of the, issues that have been talked about medallions and their pricing?
So So the TLC did implement, we called it the Medallion Relief Program, and that was a program we instituted, working with, of course, the lenders, the people who hold the loans for the medallions to, forgive their debt. And it was a great program. We were able to forgive millions of dollars of debt for medallion owners. We were able to restructure their loans.
It's Eric.
For the FHVs, you said that TLC is not issuing new medallions. So if a person has,
Plate. Yeah.
plates, sorry. If somebody has a FHV plate and then they decide to get out of business, what happens to that plate? Is it
No.
transferable?
It's not transferable. The only way it could be transferable is if they have it set up as a corp. But most of the drivers have it as it's onto their personal name.
So then for the majority of people who have it individually, they'll just be a natural turnover.
Yeah, correct. Yep, exactly. Natural nutrition.
The litigation we were talking about before, for the cap on the for hire vehicles, that's ongoing.
It is, yes,
So-
but it's electric vehicles, it was done, so
Right.
for electric vehicles, and we do have our rules in place. Since 2018, we actually stopped issuing plates for, gas vehicles, it's
Right.
been in place for a while.
So if that order is lifted, will you continue to lift the cap? for
No,
electric
we
vehicles?
already made the decision, we do an annual report every year, we've already made the decision that we're not issuing, EV plates. It's only wheelchair accessible vehicles, the only way you're gonna be able to get a TLC plate.
I want to thank you. That's consistent with the CB1 resolution.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good to hear, yeah.
Well, I have two other comments to make. One, I'm very glad to see there's a rule change that's pending right now that the TLC put forward to speed up, reduce the wait time for
Yeah.
wave vehicles.
Wave vehicles.
Because it used to be half an hour, which was ridiculous. I mean, full body would kind of die if you realized it. You want to get a taxi, you have to wait half an hour to get one. So I see they're now trying to get it more down to 10 minutes.
Yeah, and back to touch on our rules, like say if you call your local car service company, they have to provide you with a wheelchair accessible vehicle upon request, and if they tell you that, well, you're gonna have to pay more, you're gonna have to wait longer, that is a violation of our rules, and it should be filed in 311.
Yeah, and I hope that people with strollers realize that those vehicles tend to be way better for them too.
Yeah,
Because they can take any kind of wheel device.
Yeah, and with that accessible dispatch program, you do not have to be a user of a wheelchair to use that service. So yeah, if you're a mother with a stroller, it's your right to request the vehicle that you want.
So that's one of the things that I was gonna ask is what kind of outreach and public education have you done on that aspect? Because being a parent with 3 kids, it was nigh impossible for any kind of a cab to take us and things like that. Because even if I could fit into the cab and leave one person out, there was not enough room with said stroller and car seats and everything else. So the handicap available larger vehicles were the only ones who can actually accommodate everybody. But they're very hard to find. So how are you educating the public that they are also callable? I mean, is there some kind of a marketing and outreach?
Right here is one of the ways we do it, at least on our end. The accessible dispatch program is managed by, I believe it's MTM.
Yeah.
So they have their own outreach team, but we go to senior centers, we come again, community board meetings like this, street fairs, and we have, palm cards that we give out to the public, letting people know about these events as well as, their rights as, passengers.
And people have to realize that accessible often means you have a wheeled device, whether it's a stroller, whether it's a suitcase, whether it's a wheelchair or a scooter like.
Or a walk. And it would be, I mean, I'd love to see you at I'd love to see that group who's doing marketing, do marketing at things, at events that have small aged children at it. That would be probably or some really smart social media campaign that tags into all the parent groups, presenting through, doing education through the DOE somewhere, somehow.
If there's any events that you wanna like point us to, or from the community that you think would be a benefit for us to be there, we can of course look into it. We're the community affairs team, that's kind of our role, is to go out into the community.
You could start with a flyer to CB1 that they could put into the newsletter It reaches young families downtown.
We can send you PDFs of our accessible dispatch palm card. We can send you a PDF of that. Yeah.
Remember what we're saying though, is there's an accessible PDF palm card, but is it targeted to people understanding that a stroller is considered part of the accessible? Because you distribute a palm card, people are gonna automatically think, but I'm not in a wheelchair.
Yeah, couples like me, you know, I defer to that. But so if that, I fear that some people see themselves as excluded and don't realize there's a real advantage to them. And it's more to the drivers who do take on weight vehicles, that they have a whole other audience. They should be looking for them.
HRP mamas actually.
Right,
exactly.
That's what I
That
was
was the-
thinking to reach out to.
What I was gonna do
Yeah.
is actually share whatever he sends, if it's targeted to the audience, to HRP, FIDAC families.
Yeah.
You know, even,
Plenty of schools.
there's plenty
Yeah.
of family social media that we can post and tag.
Well, there's a 0-3 centers too.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be so many pre-K centers, and the DOE should be able to help you do outreach to the pre-K centers, because there's your market. There's the stroller market right there in a nutshell, and that's citywide.
You know, we could take that concern back and see what people say.
Because I can tell you, even the public library that's in my building, when they have their read-alongs and things for small children, there are lines and lines of nannies and parents with strollers going to them. So they have this huge groups that go to some of those events. If you look at even just some of the 0-3 activities at the libraries and others, that's their population.
All right, yeah, this is good advice. And yeah, we don't have anything like specifically targeted to younger groups. Like we could definitely take this back and try to work it into some of our material.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, please, and I have one last thing.
So lost and found, I find fascinating. I have lost something and found it and gone through the system and gotten it back and reached driver. So I definitely have tried many of your different versions of things over here, including complaints for somebody who wouldn't take me. Oh yeah. But what do you do with the lost and found? Where does it go? And how long does it stay there?
Well, that's typically handled by the precinct. Turn the items in. The TLC does, we don't have our own like lost and found. If drivers bring lost items to us, we tell them you have to bring it to the precinct.
What
Designated precinct, depends on where the item was lost. It depends on where the item was lost.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we just track the vehicles. And so like if you lose an item, we'll actually contact the driver, ask them if they have it and ask them to return it to you.
Right.
But we would have to get a receipt to know which vehicle it is, right?
We strongly encourage the receipt. I mean, if you know the time of day or if you paid with a credit card and have like the last four, but the easiest way just to cover all your bases is ask for a receipt. Like
Or do it through the app. If you do it through Curb or Arrow or any of those, that automatically collects all your data.
I have one last comment, and this kind of good news, bad news. North Battery Park City, overrun with TLC vehicles. I'm sure you can imagine because of all the financial institutions around Brookfield and that whole area, Goldman Sachs and all of this, they're looking for lots of rides. But they're double parked everywhere. I mean, you can't go anywhere that they don't fill the streets all day long.
So I was gonna say, please take pictures of their plates, file the room one complaints, and they do receive summonses for double parking. That is,
I can
Must
tell you,
stops.
yes, but this could be filed by every one of us around this table, every day, 6 times during the day. It doesn't make a difference what time it is. It's either in the morning for drop off, it's noon. I reported 2 of them yesterday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, just every single. Is there a way, how can we work with the TLC to educate for better enforcement or?
And that's the case, but actually have y'all come out and see it for yourselves, because they're letting you know that this is a high.
we will pass it along to our enforcement division, let them know the concerns. If you kind of show us some of the locations, can pass it along to our enforcement team.
I will, and I think the Battery Park City Authority is going to be working on this.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was the bad news. The good news side of it is, if you're using Reported at the Port on Twitter, what's X?
I still call it Twitter.
Yes, they are very, very complimentary of how much the TLC and all their lawyers really follow through.
Mhm.
They accept the complaints with pictures to show, what are they doing? Are they double parked? Are they on a crosswalk? Where are they? It's a whole list of things I didn't realize the TLC actually enforces with their lawyers.
Mhm.
And they now print the whole follow through that these lawyers at TLC follow through the whole process and track them, which is very impressive.
Oh, thank you. We'll pass it along to our colleagues. I know the ones who handle the complaints. I've had to file some myself too.
And are you on anything other than Twitter? I think I should ask that.
Especially,
We have a Facebook and an Instagram. We have a Facebook and Instagram.
Not Blue Sky, not Threads.
Well, I think,
Just checking.
this guy, because there was an order from the mayor that all the agencies had to,
Have a Blue Sky.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
what I
be
thought.
pretty new.
I've never even heard of Blue Sky.
Yeah.
I still remember MySpace, you know.
Yes.
Tumblr.
Tumblr, Xango.
great, then I'll call Mary Ann. Here, our left hand.
Someone online.
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to ask about Curb and Arrow. If we call one of them, can we also ask for an accessible car, or do we need to go through the other dispatch for the larger and wheelchair accommodating?
Curb and Arrow do have wave options. It should, when you scroll down, there should be an option that says a wave vehicle will be a WAV.
Say that again, a WAV. What does that mean?
WAV stands for wave, yeah, wheelchair accessible vehicle.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And you should see that like acronym next to it.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Answered
Thank you.
everyone's questions and we look forward to moving forward and getting all those strollers. Yes, Kate, since your boss used to have a double stroller, there was probably another person who needed some kind of accessible.
Thinking he was not a taxi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Move on to second item.
Welcome, and Tara, who's ever presenting, please come forward.
Great, yes. This is-
You can go all the way around the table. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Enough seats for you. I'm happy to move.
Sarah, yeah, you'd like to introduce. Absolutely, yeah.
Mitch.
Oh, that's perfect.
Perfect. All right. All right, thank you everyone for having us. We're certainly very excited to be here. My name is Tara Joss. For folks who don't know me, I'm with our government and community relations team at EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. I'm here with Anton Frederickson, who's the director of aviation at EDC, and also the downtown Skyport team, who we have selected for the new operating agreement for the downtown Manhattan heliport. So we have Stephen Spinello, Addison Farrell, Sherry Hyman, Tony Sclafani, all present today to introduce themselves. So we'll run through the EDC side of our presentation, which will kind of go over more of the procurement process, more about the downtown Manhattan heliport and how we operate it, and then intro the downtown Skyports team as well, for you all to get to know them a little bit more and what they'll be bringing to the heliport in the near future. And with that, I'll pass it to Anton.
So we're Tara and I are from EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. As part of the EDC's mandate, it's to administer, to the agreement administrator for waterfront property throughout the city, including two of the city-owned heliports. Our overall mission statement is to create a vibrant, inclusive, and globally competitive economy for all New Yorkers. And the way we accomplish that is really across 4 pillars: strengthening business confidence, growing innovation sectors focused on equity, building neighborhoods where people live, learn, work, and play, and delivering sustainable infrastructure. And what I'm really excited about, and we're all really excited about with the downtown Manhattan heliport, and what we're sharing with you today is that we're hitting on all of these for this upcoming project. So just to situate where we are, we're obviously in CB1 here downtown, Viadi. We also have two other heliports in Manhattan. One is city-owned, EDC administered at East 34th Street, and West 30th as well, which is run by the Hudson River Park Trust. Well, it's
located within the
within the
trust.
Hudson River Park Trust,
But it is
but it's
not-
operated by Air Pegasus, the private operator.
Correct,
Yes.
and it is not owned by the trust.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really important, please, to correct.
Thank you.
Sorry about that,
No,
Anna.
you're
As the head of the advisory council, I know that does.
perfect. So I'll keep talking about what I know really well, which is the EDC stuff and the trust. So that's the map. Okay, so for that,
Yeah, this is older text. If we can switch it to the newer version.
we have a nicer graphic we're gonna show you.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's the only copy that I got.
no, that's all right.
In the meantime, I give some background on our current operator, a bit of history about the assets. So we have a private operator at downtown Manhattan Heliport today called Saker Aviation. They've been there for 16 years. As we had a prior procurement process that was ultimately was withdrawn, and there were a number of interim steps, or an interim permit and then an interim concession agreement that were sole sourced to keep that operator still running the heliport, to give us enough time to structure a new procurement and go through that evaluation process and then ultimately select an operator. So we're still within that interim period. Another piece of context important.
When is it in?
Yes,
When is that period in?
that ends summer 2025, yeah, June. Yeah, we extended it as an additional 6 months. Doesn't mean that the transition will happen then. We have flexibility until then with the operator. We have the ability to terminate with, 25 days notice as part of that. I will also add, while we're pulling this up, that this is a concession that goes through the city's franchise and concession review committee. So there's a lot of rules and steps associated with that, and we work in lockstep with the other, with small business services and the mayor's office of contract services to go through this procurement process within the FCRC. And as part of that, there is a hearing that'll be held on Monday, which we'll talk about in the timeline. So we have, as part of our notice of public hearing, is when we officially selected the downtown Skyport team. So that was on November 21st. And then we have the public hearing now coming up on Monday. So as part of the notice, the name identity is revealed. We have to make a selection.
I would next time ask when you are going to do a public hearing on that, if the community board could be notified directly so we can share that information. Because the first time the public is going to be hearing about this was what hit in the media versus what we are able to tell them. So it's very short notice, today being Wednesday, to tell them, oh, by the way, Monday in a holiday season, there's a public hearing if you have anything to say.
Yeah, we have to follow the franchise and concession review committee protocol, which includes this notice of public hearing in the city record online. So that's where the journalists are picking it up.
Does
in
not
there.
preclude you
For sure.
from
And
notifying.
Yeah, we would have done call, or I believe someone from DC contacted someone at City One about it, but apologize, but to make it.
Ready, Zach?
Yeah.
Also show the slides here.
In the meantime, how many firms submitted proposals? Or is that the
I
right?
can show that we've received robust interest in the procurement. I can't specify the specific numbers.
I'm asking because I want to know, was it one firm or like
Multiple.
multiple?
Yeah, multiple strong.
Strong, more than 10, more than 10. I'd like to know if this was like a competitive environment or was just one or two firms that just expressed interest.
Yeah, multiple firms. We were very pleased by the robust response and the expertise that was brought from not just within US firms, but around the world as well. So while there's still kind of more things I can talk about, in November of last year, we held demonstration flights of 2 electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. This is a type of technology that we're very excited about at the city. It is at 0 emissions, but most, I think, equally as important, I'll say, but maybe to some even more important here in New York for quality of life issues is that they're orders of magnitude quieter. You cannot hear them when they are up in the sky. And we did these demonstration flights in November with a leading European, a leading American eVTOL companies, Volocopter and Joby. And we invited members in the community, stakeholders, industry to witness this flight and hear, or rather not hear for themselves, just how quiet this was. This was a mayoral event where the mayor then announced this procurement, the launch of this RFP process. And going back to your earlier question about the interest and how many we received, and we think this event really elevated this to kind of a global level and got a lot of interest into to be operators here at this asset. Perfect. Oh, can we go larger? So here's a timeline with which I will read out, but basically everything we're doing today is building on existing quality of life commitments and improvements that we've done at the heliport. So we looked at the other heliports before. I just want to clarify, this is the only heliport in Manhattan that allows for sightseeing tours. Over time, we've consolidated that here in downtown Manhattan with very strict operating procedures for that. Like for example, can only fly over water, very limited hours. There's a flight cap of 30,000. These are all through our contractual abilities with the private operator, and we're able to do that at this asset. Doesn't mean that you'll see helicopters that fly over Central Park at times or other areas. Those aren't coming from New York City. Those are coming from outside of New York City, and we don't have control over the airspace there. And that's why we need to work within this system. We can't just banning tours entirely won't solve the problem, and we actually think it's better to work, to accommodate some sightseeing tour flights in a controlled manner along overwater paths within our hours, following all our limitations as the best way to navigate in this environment. So on this larger slide, now thank you. Starting in 2010, we eliminated these short tours, which were sub 8 minutes, and tours over Central Park, Empire State Building, and Brooklyn, which were very popular. 5 years later, we eliminated the Yankee Stadium flyover. There was helicopters going around Yankee Stadium. And then in a big effort led by Borough President Brewer at the time to revisit, to institute a flight cap, working in conjunction with all the tour companies and industry and the FAA and the city all convening together to agree to a 50% reduction. So there were 60,000 helicopters tours in 2015, and that was over time reduced to 30,000. And that is the cap that remains in place today. No Sunday tours and no tours over Governor's Island. So if you see a flight over Governor Island, that should not be coming from downtown Manhattan Heliport, and if it is, then that's something we will report and investigate.
Would you be able to give us a list of who is permitted to fly out of the downtown heliport then?
Yeah, we can provide that. It would be the tour operators that are currently present at the heliport, yeah.
There's no identifiable way of knowing when they're in a copter unless the copter's named.
Say that again?
Unless it says city tours on the side of it.
Yeah.
How does the general public know who the tour operator is of the helicopter?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. There's tail numbers are really small to read, so that's not. I know that doesn't matter. There are apps that are like mobile apps, like FlightAware, for example. You can see the tail number, the flight path, where that helicopter is originating from.
Yes, their altitude, their
What is
speed.
it doing that well? They just see something.
I do it all the time.
I do it for the boat. I do it for the boat.
Not on the level of you and her.
So, and Tom, what would be really helpful for the public to be able to digest is a flyer of you know, hear something, say something kind of a thing, see something, say something. The only way to do that is if you can empower the public with knowledge of how to do that.
Yeah, we have on our website a description of how to, you know, what information to put in a 3011, but it's a good point of what additional information would be helpful.
Yeah, and how they find it.
Yeah, yeah.
A lovely, robust social media and tagging CB1 would be really helpful.
I'm just gonna point out that that's a very thick stack of paper.
I know, I'll go very quickly.
Yeah,
through
keep
this.
going. All right.
So what are we doing new today that we're sharing with you is we're solving this chicken and egg problem with electric aircraft. They're, you know, where do you charge them, for example? So we're requiring that infrastructure to be built, even if these aircraft don't get certificated. And so I should explain this as well. So these electric air taxis, they're technologically ready, but they need to go through FAA certification to determine that they are fully safe to operate. And that is a process that we don't control. But we want to make sure that we can accommodate these aircraft as soon as they have a certification in place. And we anticipate that's going to be in around the 2026 timeframe. But we want to make sure that the infrastructure is built out to support that. We announced in our RFP a 30% reduction in the helicopter tour operating hours, and in particular, the early morning and late evening. So you can see there the two difference in the hours. We're requiring improved data collection and reporting, not just on flights that we receive complaints on, but on all activity leaving from the airport, from the heliport. We are requiring incentivization plans, which the downtown Skyport team can get into in more detail, to further reduce takeoffs and landings of these traditional helicopters and incentivizing the electric alternatives. And then what we're also doing, which is really exciting, is we're activating something called the Blue Highway, which is a citywide initiative to take trucks off of roadways and move some of that freight onto waterways with last mile electric bicycles and delivery bicycles and what are called e-quads for the last mile trips in Lower Manhattan. We think this is a great way to make our freight transportation more sustainable as well. This is the flight. I'll go very quickly, but for some visuals, it's the Joby aircraft on the top left, the Volocopter aircraft on the top right, and the mayor in the middle with various electeds and leaders from the industry. This was in November of 2023.
I think we had a couple of people who attended that day.
Yeah.
Also want to touch on another announcement that this is not just downtown Manhattan Heliport. We've recently announced, as recently as October, a renewal of our existing agreement with another private operator called Atlantic Aviation at East 34th Street Heliport. And as part of that renewal, they need to invest in the electric charging infrastructure as well. So in this rendering you see here, there are 3 aircraft, 3 different leading eVTOL companies that are positioned there. So these are the same timeframes. We're doing this citywide. Quickly on the timeline, the MARAD is Maritime Administration. We received money, or we received a grant for that to activate the Blue Highway. In November, that event, we released the RFP. We had info session in December, so a lot of detail. February, we received submissions and closed the RFP. We've been reviewing and evaluating and negotiating over the past year. We provided our notice on the 21st of November for this Franchise Concession Review Committee. On Monday, December 9th, we will have the public hearing, and then there's a number of steps after that, and then a transition. But we're aiming in the first quarter of next year to start that new operating or the new period, or the new contract period begins.
Yeah, and as Anton mentioned earlier, because of the procurement rules, we had to wait until we could publish in the public record before notifying folks, and so that's why November 21st was the date that we did outreach for the community board, elected officials on the public hearings.
We touched a lot on the goals already, so I'll skip past that. Just on the term, I'll highlight it's an initial 5-year term with a second conditional 5-year renewal. So the operator will only get that second 5-year term if they've demonstrated that they've built out the electric charging infrastructure and the Blue Highway infrastructure as well. So those two need to be in place prior to that second 5 years. And then we've actually structured provided an optionality for the city for 2 additional 5 years at its option, beyond that. And part of the reason, and I'll touch on it, I think it's particularly relevant for Community Board 1 is, as you know, there is a coastal resiliency project taking place in FIDI, Seaport Resiliency Project, and we want to make sure we have flexibility because the heliport will be affected by rising sea levels as well. And that's why we structure those 2 additional 5-year options. The plan, as we understand it, would not contemplate touching the heliport site until after 10 years from now. So the first 10 years would not be affected. It's really the conditional following. There's also additional MWB and workforce development commitments, 30% on design and construction, and ongoing conversations to develop a workforce development training program, which I'll let the Downtown Skyport team touch on in more detail. Quickly on our proposal evaluation criteria, it's not just about money, although that's important. There's other criteria that we're weighing here: planned operations, operating experience, how much they're putting in to invest in the facility, their project plans, and then their financial capability. Turn this back to Tara.
So our next step, as we mentioned, is December 9th, is when we'll have the FCRC public hearing. I believe there's opportunity to testify there. Following that, there is one additional step of the comptroller registering the contract. And so only until after that is finalized, can we officially transition to a new operator. And also to call out, so the Community Board does receive monthly reports that detail flight complaints. We've heard from folks over the past couple of years that these definitely need to be improved, and so would love to work with you all in the near future on ways to improve, what kind of information would be helpful. So as we go into this new operating contract, we can be providing much better reports. And with that, I'll switch it over to the Downtown Skyport team.
Good question for you. Is there web access to the Monday hearing, or do we have?
I'm not sure about that. That's not a process that we operate, but I believe the MOX website for the franchising session review committee is where you can register. I believe it's only in person, but would have to double check.
If you could let us know, we'll
Yeah.
publish that information and put it out, so we could help push the public along. Yeah. Monday's actually a really busy day. The holidays.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for giving us this opportunity. My name is Addison Farrell. I'm Director of Infrastructure for Skyports, which is part of the Downtown Skyport joint venture. I'm here with my colleague, Stephen.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. Stephen Spinello. I lead up our partnerships team based in Brooklyn.
So we're thrilled to be here in the room now, but also to be selected as the operator in the future of the Downtown Manhattan Heliport. So we don't wanted to introduce ourselves, share a little bit about our plans in conjunction with what Hinton and Tara shared. So the Downtown Skyport joint venture, it's a joint venture of two companies, Skyports, which Stephen and I both represent, and Group ADP, who had a conflict tonight and unfortunately couldn't make it, so they send their apologies. As two companies, we have a long history of working together. Group ADP was actually an early investor in Skyports and has invested in multiple rounds. And so our history goes back for a long while. Let me just explain briefly who we are. So Skyports, we were founded with the explicit goal to develop the infrastructure for the emerging advanced air mobility industry for eVTOLs. So to build and operate that infrastructure, that's the reason why we were founded, and that's what we do all around the world. Group ADP, as I mentioned, an early ongoing investor with Skyports. They are a longstanding, very large, one of the largest in the world, operators of airports. They're French in origin, Aéroports de Paris, that's ADP. They operate all the airports around Paris, but also have assets that they operate elsewhere around the world, including New York Stewart Airport here in New York. So the reason we came together is we believe that we each bring a unique skill set that when we come together, creates a really strong team for Downtown Manhattan Heliport. Some of our operating experience, we each operate heliports. As I mentioned, ADP operates some very large airports such as Charles de Gaulle in Paris, the New York Stewart International Airport, the Port Authority asset here in New York. And then as part of our consortium team as well, we have some last mile delivery and maritime freight providers, Rycon, Windsorb Marine, and Dutchex. And then as well on our team is Turner Construction, Skyports and Turner. Skyport's biggest investor is Turner's parent company, so we're kind of sister companies in a way. And we work closely with them, and Sherry is here to support us as well here in New York. In terms of heliport operating experience, Skyports, we operate one of the 2 commercial heliports in London. It's called Skyports London Heliport. And Group ADP operates the 1 commercial heliport in Paris, Issy-les-Moulineaux Heliport. In terms of advanced air mobility expertise, the eVTOL infrastructure expertise, both companies are doing it today. In this picture, this is in Dubai, where Joby, one of the leaders that Anton referenced, that did the demonstration at the heliport last November. We are in partnership with them to build out new facilities there in the UAE, and it will be the first net new infrastructure in the world where eVTOLs are operating commercially. So that's Skyports. There are examples too for ADP, where they built out vertiports across the city of Paris as well. So we both have multiple projects where we're doing real world work today, preparing that infrastructure for the coming eVTOLs in the future. Hand it over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, so Addison already touched on this a little bit, but recognizing that the downtown Manhattan heliport is very much a local asset to New York City, even though we do have global ambitions as a company, we wanted to assemble sort of the best team possible to pull off what it is that EDC is looking to achieve, right? So in addition to the electric aircraft component, we've done quite a bit of due diligence in terms of finding who the best partners are to activate this new Blue Highways program. So that includes the likes of Dutchex, which, as mentioned, they have a significant presence in New York City already. They have one of the largest fleets of e-cargo bikes and e-quads. So again, a lot of this is somewhat preliminary in terms of which folks will ultimately end up working with, but we've targeted these companies specifically based on their existing expertise and competencies. So Dutchex for the last mile delivery service provision, and then Rycon, who's done quite a bit of work on maritime infrastructure, working with EDC's ferry fleet. So go to the next slide. So again, really want to emphasize here that, as much as possible, Skyports shares EDC's vision to transform this into something more than just a heliport or a helicopter asset. So looking at things like the Blue Highways program, how do we ensure that we're activating that in such a way that it's really providing value to the community, right? So whether or not it's transporting goods from Hunts Point in the Bronx down to Lower Manhattan, or connecting other parts of the city, across the East River in Brooklyn, perhaps. So a lot of that's still somewhat tentative. I'm sure Anton can provide additional color on sort of where the Blue Highways program sits, but we are very excited about taking this to the next level and sort of moving beyond a sort of single purpose asset and transforming it into something much grander in terms of its multimodal capabilities. So obviously, I'm sure you guys have an opinion in terms of how the heliport affects your everyday lives, the ways in which helicopters interact with your day-to-day. So we see this as a great opportunity to sort of reset, right? Take stock of where the heliport is today. That involves speaking with folks like yourselves, but it also means that we need to ensure sort of a consistent line of communication with the community. So as much as possible, we want to take this opportunity to, again, take stock, reset. One of the things that we're looking at is commissioning a third-party survey that would look at not just the surrounding community, so CD1, of course, but expanding the aperture, right? Looking at communities in Brooklyn Heights, perhaps along the East River as you get closer to East 34th Street, communities that have historically been impacted by conventional helicopter traffic, and looking into the ways in which we can address those community concerns, or at least identify them, right? Catalog them, get a better understanding of where folks sit. So that's sort of one of the first pillars of our community engagement plan. And again, this is all still somewhat in flux, but we feel like this is a good start. And the other thing, obviously, is looking at the 311 complaint system to, first of all, better understand how those complaints and submissions are processed. Looking at the ways in which we can potentially work with EDC to update that reporting template to better reflect some of the community concerns around how those complaints are handled. So again, really emphasize that listen first, talk second. And I just want to reemphasize, this is a great opportunity as a new operator to, just take stock of the existing environment, see if there's ways that we can improve. One of the other things that we're super excited about, so Vaughn College, it's a local aviation focused technical school based just outside of LaGuardia Airport. They have some fantastic programs that are already in place that are focused on traditional aviation, but we see a great opportunity to use the heliport to integrate that with their existing curriculum and potentially build new curriculum into that existing program. So again, like none of these schools, it shouldn't represent the only schools that we're talking to. It's just the ones that we've had sort of initial conversations with that have expressed interest in potentially partnering with us. So one of the things that we've talked about doing with Sharon DeVivo's team, who leads up on college, is looking into the ways in which we can potentially host sort of a hands-on STEM workshop with students that are, either pursuing careers in aviation or aerospace or aerodynamics, and looking into ways that we can integrate that into the heliport as we transition. So I'm gonna hand it back to Addison here to close us out.
Yeah.
We'll take.
Yeah, we just wanted to highlight, as Anthony has already mentioned, some of the benefits of eVTOLs. The all electric nature means that there's a possibility for them to be cheaper to operate in this, more accessible for the common public to people to afford rides in them. Safer given the redundancy and fewer single points of failure. Sustainability because there's no operating emissions in flight, and then very importantly, much quieter. Having seen Joby aircraft and others at their test facilities fly, they're meaningfully quieter. You can quote how quiet they are in decibels. It doesn't really mean a lot. You can have to see and not hear it, as Anton was saying, but we think that the quality of life opportunity here is really quite exciting.
What's matter?
65 decibels at 100 meters.
It's quiet in this room right now.
Yeah, pretty good. And this is us kind of reiterating again what Anton said and our excitement about the timeline that we're seeing for certification of aircraft in late 2025, early 2026, with really the major leaders globally being US-based companies. And New York City being an opportunity to be the first to take some of that existing aviation infrastructure and repurpose it for eVTOLs and be a leader for the world in that sense. And that's it. This is a rendering we kind of jointly created with EDC team to represent a vision for what the future could look like. As you can see, a few different eVTOL aircraft parked. And then the barge for the maritime freight highways program.
And if you guys want a movie preview version of this, there is an animated version that we're happy to share with you guys. So
That'd be fun.
He's not.
Yes, Timmy.
So can you talk, I'm assuming this is for the first 10 years based on what EDC has said, correct? So the vision that you show in the video would be the quote, first 10 years.
Well, this would all be built prior to the end of the initial 5-year term. So all this has, everything you see here, assuming these aircraft are certificated by then, would be in the initial 5-year term.
So one of my questions goes back to the LMCR plan and the FIDI Seaport Master Plan where Pier 6 is actually physically moving. And so how does that work with what they're doing for infrastructure and the other conversations around Pier 6? because it's an important part of the expansion
Yeah.
that they're looking at for the second terminal, which is widely going to be different than what is shown here and wouldn't actually be able to function with the photos that you're showing now.
For sure. So this is pre coastal resiliency, and we are very, involved with internally at our team that's at EDC that's also working on these projects. So we're coordinating very closely. Our understanding of the timeline is that this, as it currently sits, is what we will phase around for the first 10 years, and that those 5 years after that give us flexibility to relocate as needed.
In between years 10 and 20, so to speak.
Yes, once the project is up and
Yeah.
we don't know the exact timeline yet, so this is.
Gotcha. And back to Stephen, my question goes to, there was a lot of reporting recently with the winning of the contract about air taxis. And that's, as much as we love the TLC being here and the rise of the for-hire vehicles for convenience is also the issues that we have for congestion. And we ended up with congestion pricing from 100,000 for-hire vehicles hitting our streets. That's totally different
Right.
from TLC. I know that there's a much more limited way that the FAA will allow you to expand into that market, but I'd like some more detail on what are we talking about? How different is that? Which is now all privatized, whether it's tour or private helicopters. There's not really a, hey, let me walk down the pier and go grab a helicopter and go out to X. So how can you explain to us what you're talking? I'm sure that you're looking and contracting for an increase in service at this pier and stations. And so what
Not at this time.
in the future with so how does the escalation work? What is the plan on the air taxi that we've heard so much about? Will it start before you get EVs? Will it start with regular powers, et cetera?
Yeah, so a lot of that is outside of my control, unfortunately. So the FAA's certification process is a very detailed and very comprehensive one for the purposes of public safety. So they really take their time in certifying these aircraft. So with that being said, we're still on target for this timeline as shown tonight. But the aircraft that are sort of, deployed operationally will be incremental to start. It's not going to be like an onslaught of vehicles and suddenly you can look up and there's gonna be thousands of air taxis flying all over the airspace just because the FAA typically won't sign off on that. And I think, in terms of what that looks like from a customer standpoint, I mean, it feels like you're getting toward an equity question, like whether or not this is accessible to the general public.
Before we get to equity, I'm looking to understand, are you starting the service with the regular existing normal type of helicopters? So when you take control in 2025, will air taxi be a business model that you're using with regular copters? And if so, of adding to that model at the pier, what is the increase in the frequency of the additional business line that you're doing?
Yeah, Addison, feel free to jump in anytime, but in terms of deploying actual air taxis at Downtown Manhattan Heliport, a lot of that's driven by the OEMs, the manufacturers who have aircraft that are ready to fly. So Joby, Archer, Beta, less focused on passengers. These companies will introduce aircraft incrementally into the market that can then be placed strategically in different markets, whether it's New York, whether it's the Middle East and Dubai. So it's not going to be like hundreds of aircraft operating on day one. We would like to transition some of the existing air tour operators, and they've already expressed interest in doing this just because they see the value in addressing some of the quality of life concerns, noise mitigation. How do we begin to substitute out some of that aircraft? So there's the incentivization structure, which we agreed to with EDC, that's already in place. As these eVTOLs come to market, we can introduce them, right? In terms of air taxis, we do not, and I'll let Addison chime in, we do not have any immediate plans to increase that service just because as of right now, first of all, there's no aircraft that are ready to fly. The FAA hasn't certified any aircraft. So as of right now, we're only operating within the air tour.
Yeah, I was going to clarify, when you say air taxi, it could also be like with the traditional helicopters that
That's
you're referencing?
exactly what I'm
Okay, so
referencing.
just, so to Stephen's point, like, that he's talking specifically about the electric.
Sorry,
In this-
I should.
Sorry, in this,
Yeah.
in this, we already run a heliport today. There is very little demand for that service at downtown. So most of the traffic, 90% plus, is sightseeing tours. And from EDC and the city's perspective, and what we've negotiated in this, through this RFP and concession agreement, is that sightseeing tour cap remains in place. So what we want to see is helicopter tours going down over time and EV tolls replacing. That's why we're not lifting the cap. There is a measure, and I like here, it's in the concession agreement, that if they hit, they can only come to us requesting if EV tolls can fly, if they can add additional EV tolls only after half of all of the existing helicopter sightseeing tours have been replaced by electric alternatives. They have to hit at least half fully replaced before they can come and ask. Now, we're not saying that we're gonna lift it, but we would have to study, you know, if they're truly as quiet when they roll out, as we say, that it's not, you know, a highway of these, you know, aircraft. So we want to make sure that, you know, it's measured, that quality of life has, you know, drastically improved. And then we could look at EV tolls, you know, being separate from that now reduced. But what we're seeing through this policy structure is it's replacement to start. And there's more, and actually what's neat about sightseeing tours is like, it's the perfect use case for these new type of aircraft. It's point A to point A. So you have a charger. We know there's definitely a charger at A now. It's the type of distance that works well within the range of these batteries. And it's replacing something that's loud and you know, that, you know, some people don't appreciate, or many people don't appreciate. Yeah, and maybe just one side note, when we talk about launch markets for this new technology, it's become increasingly clear that it'll be, you know, that we hope it's New York City because of helicopters. If you're going to introduce a new type of aircraft in a different market, one, there's not a ton of demand for that already, but you're also introducing something new. Here, we have, like, you know, a pain point from some perspectives that becomes, I mean, for me, I care a lot about the sustainability, I care a lot about the noise, but I think we're going to use noise to shepherd in and like ride the kind of coattails of noise and noise reduction, and then bring in the sustainability as well. So that's, I think, why we're particularly excited about what this asset can be, and the partners that we have selected to you know, realize this vision alongside us, and with your input along the way as well.
All right.
So I saw part, I didn't finish the contract, it was like 100 pages, but I skimmed through it and I saw there were restrictions on the tours, like 9 to 5, right? So, that's only for conventional, you know, internal combustion engines, right? That they would have that, or is that for any, or you're saying that if they reach a half point reduction, then they can talk about increasing it, right?
So yeah, that's the total volume that we're talking about. In terms of the hours, we could look at, there's a 30% further reduction in the helicopter tour hours. But one other incentive is that EV tolls could, you know, once they're ready, could potentially do a flight and that was, you know, previously allowed, but has now been reduced. And I think that is one of the, you know, incentive tools we will, you know, look at, or I think it's Downtown Skyport will look at.
So does that mean that helicopters could only operate up until 5 p.m., nothing after?
Sightseeing helicopters cannot operate beyond.
Okay, so that means if somebody wanted an air taxi, you could operate after 5 p.m.
But we also have, the entire heliport has operating hours as well, which I believe is, to get the exact hours, but 7 p.m. or 8 p.m.
It's 7 on the screen.
Okay, because I'm thinking, what's the sightseeing helicopter versus an air taxi? Because I'm just thinking about being on a helicopter, even if I don't start off at the downtown heliport. If I go to a different heliport, that could be an air taxi, but it's still, it could still be a sightseeing ride.
It's like a loophole.
Right.
So if what's this expression about ducks or something? Whatever. Like if it looks like whatever. We will treat that as a tour if it's behaving. We can see the flight path, and we will, you know, through our contract or through for Downtown Skyports, through their contractual measures with their tour operators, they have, you know, ways to make sure that they don't continue doing that kind of behavior and issue warnings.
Okay, great. So it's not just point A to point A.
No, it's any type of sightseeing tour from here.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any sightseeing tours that are doing that A to B at this moment, but doesn't mean that people, and we have seen it from time to time at other heliports where they do exactly what you're describing. And we've, you know, issued warnings and come down hard.
And so say, I'm glad that we have this here. It adds to different, you know, options and it adds an attraction for downtown as well, having a heliport.
I have just a capacity question, as long as we're talking about this. The current downtown heliport says 12 helicopters on the barge, 18 automobiles in the parking lot. Is the capacity staying the same? With the blue highways, how will this change?
Yeah, so in terms of landing spots on the pier and barge, unchanged, as we planned it at least. The barge, for Blue Highways, in the very early stages of design, whether that will take away car parking spots, TBD, it's possible. I don't know. I would say that's certainly more at risk than helicopter / eVTOL landing spots.
But most of it, the reason, like, as you can see, there's a staging area on the barge as well. So we're trying to do a lot of the activity there, and it's really then for the e-bikes, the electric delivery bikes to then go across the gangway and then into the streetscape.
Question and comment. Question would be, is Joby the American or the European company?
Very American.
US-based company.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then, comment is, I don't know if you guys are in contact with Urban Assembly Maker Academy. They are an awesome high school. They are literally just up the street there. And we'd be happy to put you in touch because they like making stuff. And so if you guys
would
are
be
doing
excellent.
STEM work, then that
One
would
of
be
the
a
reasons why we're
great,
here.
awesome.
Same kind of thing with the harbor school, because they have
Yes.
their own welders on site. They have a full manufacturing out at harbor and they focus on Blue Highway. So a partnership with them being on Governor's Island would be interesting as well.
Absolutely.
All right.
So I read the agreement also. It requires parking for employees. You have like a head count of 97 employees.
That's-
So-
The 97, I think you're referencing is for the delivery partners for the last mile delivery. So those, they will not be parking here, they're,
Okay,
at this
so-
facility.
Where?
Where are they parking?
Well, they get their own bikes.
Right, that's why I'm asking the question, why do we need parking for,
Well, the part would be for the heliport employees, the ones that are on the aeronautical side of the house. So like the Rampage and
yeah, the FBO staff, I get that, but it says for all employees and it gives a head count of 97, so I thought, where are 97 parking places going?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we would not anticipate 97 employees parking their vehicles.
That's why I asked
Right.
about the 18 parking
Right,
spots.
so,
As I understand it, most of Dutch X's, just as an example, Dutch X's workforce is locally based. So these folks are taking the subway, they're taking public transportation, perhaps they live locally. I don't think we have any expectation that we'll be reserving spots for.
it's part of your concession agreement that you must, it says that you must
Okay,
provide
if that's-
parking, so I'm
Okay,
just,
so, yeah.
I'm just
Is it-
raising
is it the
it
same
because
time?
maybe you should renegotiate that.
That definitely defeats the purpose of the blue highway.
So let me continue on with my questions
So
then.
that would be for employees for the heliport operator, not necessarily for the,
But 97's.
Right, so
90
let
it's
me,
not
may I-
97 for the heliport operator.
With congestion pricing, really? Right,
Yeah.
but then it just brings up this other tension that I see in the contract between incentivizing aviation. Aviation is paramount, and it says that the Blue Mile should not interfere with aviation services. So there's a prioritization over aviation services over Blue Mile. And my question is, at what point would we want to actually flip that incentive so that Blue Mile becomes a larger part of this operating program than the tourism and air taxi component?
Or have it. I mean, you're asking a helicopter company to
No.
put themselves out. I'm fine.
So I get it, I'm very excited about.
To be fair, we're
all
not
of that.
helicopters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but it is a logistics, like it's a prioritization piece. So I just don't know
I
what the
think-
process is.
Well,
for-
if I could
Hands on,
just
correct me if
answer
I'm
to this
wrong.
real quick. So I mean, part of it is, this is a public use heliport, so by the FAA, this has to be a heliport. So we can't exactly just completely change its use because of that federal regulation, as well as like the land use regulations around this. So we want to activate Blue Highway here because we know it would be a really critical node to do that, and we know we can, which is why it's like a heliport and not like heliport or Blue Highway.
Right,
So that-
but the contract says that, or the concession agreement specifically says that
Blue Highway only to the extent that, and that gave me a little bit of pause.
And,
So-
and I think that's the point, is that we're not trying to take away the aviation uses of this heliport. So that's really what it comes down to, is that we don't want to be completely eroding the aviation purpose of the heliport. So there will be Blue Highway there. It's not, we're not saying that there will not be. Part of this procurement was to mandate Blue Highway, which was a huge part of, this procurement cycle. So that is certainly a priority here.
Parking to be loaded.
And it's not like a volume cap either between the two, right? If it's
Right.
just that you have to coordinate around, you know, when the president lands, for example, but, you know, maybe
Oh,
we
for
pull
sure.
back the blue highway delivery at that
Mhm.
time.
Right.
It's a more coordination piece.
Right. And then I'm happy to be part of your community liaison group. I'm a pilot, so I'm interested. One of the things that I notice is in the special area rules, like if there's a way to lift the ceiling a little bit, I don't know how we go about that, but the helicopter, the altitude as they come around lower.
So we'd have to work with the FAA on that. So it's a different.
That's,
So we're already mandating that they fly, because then it starts intersecting
Right. With
you know,
Newark and all of
exactly with
those.
the flight paths there. But we, you know, so we are in this EDC hat now, like working, you know, we work very closely with the FAA, the broader helicopter community on exactly these questions. Where can we, you know, or how do we make sure that these helicopters or aircraft are flying at the highest possible altitudes? And where they don't interfere then with the airspace, and that's something that I think we have this language that they should fly in at the highest possible within the
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
SFAR.
Yes.
It's two different acronyms,
Right.
SFAR.
Yeah.
And I heard you said FBO, and I was like, oh, we must
Yeah,
be in
yeah.
the industry.
Oh, I-
Fixed base operator. for-
Yes, yes. No, it's very, very exciting. I hope that the incentive plan for eVTOL also incentivizes the Blue Highway in equal measure. So
Right.
just make it that.
So I mean, we did talk a little bit about the helicopter taxi situation. Are you not anticipating it to grow? And, because it seems like if there's an operator that also has an airport in the Hudson Valley, it would make sense to have taxis that go to Stewart. Especially considering there's a huge commuter population in the area.
Talking about for helicopters or?
yes.
Anything,
Yes.
all of it.
An air taxi model with the current usage types before you get to the EVs.
So we're not seeing that today. So it's allowed as a use, but that demand is not there. So, I mean, could they accommodate more aircraft? Yes, they have the capacity, but we're just not seeing that from the market. And part of it was to Addison's point earlier is, you know, helicopters are expensive to operate it, and it's, you know, not something that most people can commute with. I think eVTOLs have the opportunity or the potential to get cheaper over time through scale. But at least in terms of the traditional operations, we're not seeing that, and we don't anticipate an increase in that type of travel as well. And correct me if I'm wrong.
I feel like we could though, since I know people that are talking about Blade, like, I know like we're the richest city in the world now. It's not out of the realm of reason to think that more people would want to take a helicopter to the airport, any of the airports in the region, from downtown, where there's going to be more residences really quickly.
And there's not a lot of transit. There's, in the past 5 to 10, COVID kind of messes with things, but you know, if you think back even 10 years ago, we didn't have a helicopter that went New York to the Hamptons, but we did more recently. And I believe, although you'd have to tell me from EDC and from the new operators, how successful that is, I would assume it's very successful, because being on a car, bus, anything that's taking on the roads out to Hamptons just is pretty gross, right? And we've seen an incredible resurgence in people taking the highly subsidized boats out to beaches. So there's definitely, when people escape out of the city, and now you have a shorter window that people actually work in the city, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, it does seem like there are opportunities to develop routes that take you to upstate or take you to you know, from Manhattan to the smaller airports where airlines like Play go out of in New Haven and things like that. So it does seem like it's a way to reduce the traffic on the roads by using, especially the electric ones, but, and you have to develop those relationships in advance to make that work.
We see the electric as very much an unlock, but that's the thesis of why Skyports was founded, frankly. You know, we see the electric as an unlock to a new mode of transportation in cities around the world. Just as you said, there's a lot of congestion, not just in New York, but everywhere. And so
Stewart, that's the important thing.
Yes.
Stewart.
And it's like in such a good location for going to the mountain.
So we're very keen on enabling that. We think that eVTOLs will be more of that unlock than incremental changes to today, where it's possible we're just not seeing a lot of it with existing helicopters. So we do think that it will be eVTOLs that will primarily open up the air taxi.
Maybe it's time to just continue.
Wait a minute.
Then
Thank you. Sorry. I waited my turn for once. Few things. One, fast feedback. I think you should move the next slide up. Because we talked about like all eVTOLs for like 40 minutes, and then on like the next last slide, you'll actually explain what it is. So that's one thing. Two, what's the expectation in terms of percentage that you expect year over year? And this is, you know, not solid because we don't even have them yet. Like the movement from the traditional helicopter to the eVTOLs. Like how fast are we expecting those to start to switch out specifically at this location?
I can tell you our hypothesis, which ultimately we don't control, but we incentivize as much as possible. Our hypothesis is that by the end of that 10-year period, we're over 50% electric in terms of the landings at the facility.
And then you talked about scaling the electric, which then brought me back to the fact that like we're just now getting to the Blade era where like, you know, Joe Schmo can take a helicopter to the airport. Is everything about to become more expensive, at least to start out with the electric? Because I'm guessing that they're expensive. So including like air taxis, the tours, all that stuff. Because I mean, like, what does the revenue model look like for electric coming out of this location?
So would electric be actually more expensive?
Right. Well, I'm guessing it's going to be. It almost has to be to start with.
Maybe, but at the same time, if it is more expensive, for the operator of the aircraft, for us, it's going to be hard for them to really drive much volume into their aircraft as well. So that's the fundamental business model of like Joby, for example. I'll just say like there are some engineering reasons why it has the potential to be cheaper to operate, such as just much simpler. An electric motor is fundamentally much simpler than a turbine engine, and the maintenance on that, which is, you know, a huge expense, can be far cheaper. So the cost to the likes of Joby is opportunity for it to be much cheaper than a helicopter.
Fuel and maintenance, which are the main costs for traditional helicopters, and both those are, well, fuel is much cheaper for the charging and then also maintenance. I also wanted to touch on like the aircraft themselves may be like an upfront initial investment, but I think operating is what we're expecting it to be cheaper. And then and then the other point I want to mention is on the landing fees as part of the incentives. That's where we would, you know, downtown Skyport will be, you know, to the extent that they can legally justify it in a non-discriminatory way for everything that flies, be able to price electric aircraft at a cheaper price point on the landing to create an incentive. If I'm a tour operator purchasing these fleets, I can, you know, I do the math and I was like, oh, maybe it makes more sense for me to invest in this newer aircraft because I can benefit from the cheaper operating costs using this infrastructure. And that's another one of these incentives that we've been that we have in our agreement.
Yeah, Mitch.
Talking about New Haven and Stewart, makes me curious, what would be a maximum range that you think that you guys can go, like when I've had to go to Potsdam, the closest airport was Syracuse, which is almost a 3-hour drive away. So I'm just curious, what's the maximum range?
Damn, how do you drive?
Well,
Come on, say-
I've done that a few times, but at the university, but there was a couple of times where time was of the essence and I just couldn't do the 6.5 hour drive. Anyway, it's not about, I'm just curious about the maximum range.
Yeah. So, we'll use Joby as the example, the one that's in the foreground here. They have demonstrated they can fly 150 miles on a single charge, with reserves and the like. I would think it'll be closer to 100 miles on their Gen 1 aircraft. And as battery technology improves, that's the range.
So you're talking about like maybe Albany, maybe?
No.
No,
Stewart. You get to Stewart.
It gets,
Okay.
pretty much.
All right, thank you.
And how many passengers?
4 passengers. Plus a pilot.
I've read some articles recently done, I guess in the Times and some other places, where people, in fact, one was a couple, and he went by taxi and she went by helicopter, because eVTOLs, of course, weren't available. And it was very interesting to hear the drawbacks and issues that went, because in fact, the husband in the end ended up beating her for the reasons.
That's interesting.
But nevertheless, there's also weight limit on how much luggage that could be carried. And I think that's an important point, because a lot of people can't function with that and aren't organized enough to ship it in advance, which people who travel a lot are used to doing very light and sending it in advance.
I mean, for me, I'm excited.
We just
100 miles is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I have one more thing, just to,
I think Zach.
oh, unless, Zach? You wanna talk, Zach?
Yeah. I had a question about, what your plan is for pulling power out there and what your timeline is for that. And are you using Con Ed? Just based on our, work with, construction projects or street changes, with a trench fully open, taking the time it takes for Con Ed just to like move a line from, 2 feet across to make way for, a water line or something takes a long time. And that's with an open trench. So I assume, I just wanted to know how sophisticated you are on getting power to there and when.
I'll kick off and then I'll turn it over to downtown Skyport. But even prior to this RFP went out, this is like the first question. We don't want to go through all of this and then we're like, oh wait, there's no power. Like that wouldn't work. So we've been engaged with Con Edison since, prior to this RFP. And then we've also, our own energy team, we've, analyzed the capacity at the local substation to see, if we can accommodate the loads that we anticipate from these aircraft, and it can. So that's like the first check, just so we don't look silly down the line. Through as part of downtown Skyport's proposal, they've studied it as well. And then when we were, selected them or prior to during our negotiation stage, we also facilitated introduction with Con Edison so that they could have a direct conversation and be able to collaborate directly with them, make sure that they supply their load requirements and kick off that conversation, because exactly as you're pointing out, it's a long lead time, and this is what we wanted to start as soon as possible. So with that, I'll then turn it to Addison.
Yeah, I don't have much to start. Go ahead.
I think you nailed an important point and a concern for us. Con Ed was great when we spoke to them. They did highlight lead times can be long. Very wide range. They gave us.
They're a master of understatement.
Fair enough.
Take the long end.
Yeah, so I mean, our intention would be, first of all, transition safely, like that's priority one right now is the transition needs to be minimal disruptions and safe. Safety is always number one in aviation. But then as soon as that is done, that's when we kick off the engagement with Con Ed on the design and permitting and so forth, because we know it'll take a long time.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I will say, based on our preliminary conversations with Con Ed, it seems like they have developed a certain level of expertise, having worked on other projects around the city. So like Rebel, for example, installs a lot of DC fast charging infrastructure. And I think there's been a lot of learnings from those other projects. So they don't see like any sort of, artificial constraints that would prevent us from front running that process as much as possible.
What timelines did they give you?
No definitive timeline.
I think it was like 12 to 24 years.
It was a risk.
Years. I was like,
So
years probably.
just so,
I bet.
this is when you
Yeah.
realistically look, you take the first number, you add it to the last number, and that's actually,
Yeah.
that's your.
Let's set a date now.
Can I just ask about, the emissions on these things? Because they're obviously quieter, but I imagine they require an enormous amount of power to charge these things. Obviously, like with electric cars, we're starting to see that the difference isn't really that much. Is there data on that and what the emissions is compared to?
Yes, I can just speak to like the rough capacity, think like 2 Teslas, in terms of battery pack size. So is it more power and energy intensive to fly than to drive? Yes. Tracing that, all the way to the upstream emissions, the CO2 per passenger per mile. I'll be honest, I don't know that exactly. But just for a rough framing, 2 Tesla batteries is kind of the general size.
Did you mean in comparison?
And how does it compare
Yeah.
to traditional helicopters?
2 traditional helicopters. I would have to get back to you because we're not designing the aircraft. That's where we're.
You're talking about like to manufacture and the emissions
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the whole thing, the life cycle?
Carbon life cycle, is that what you're referring to?
Good, because it kind of depends on, where the power is coming from in the grid, right?
Yeah,
So
well, we know ours comes from gas.
at EDC, we're working on offshore wind, supporting that industry as well. So, there's a number of other sources that.
Yeah.
2 Tesla batteries, wouldn't that be awfully heavy?
Yeah, so to be clear, they're not using the Tesla batteries. These are highly engineered for this purpose. They have different requirements. Just in terms of the energy capacity, it's roughly 2 Tesla batteries in energy capacity in terms of like kilowatt hours of energy. These are highly engineered and different than what you'd find in your Tesla.
So do you need to like make special accommodations for this type of aircraft because of the weight? I would think it'd be heavier.
So no, it's actually not. They're on the order of 5,000 to 7,000 pounds, where this facility can accommodate Marine One, which is quite a bit heavier than that, for example. So that actually
Multiple ospreys and.
yeah, it should be fine.
Oh,
Let's do it. You mean that time is?
lightning fast. Regarding Stewart across the river, there's Dutchess County Community College that has an aviation education, it's a really neat program.
Thank you for the
Um,
plug. I'll add to my
two-
list.
2 questions came up from what you said. When you're in doing the load and talking with Con Ed, will that also include on the barge the opportunity, because boats that are electric dock differently than gas and diesel power? So it'd be terrible to not include, electrical infrastructure for the Blue Highway while you're doing the other parts of the pier, because then you'd have diesel on electric. It's not gonna necessarily, making sure that you don't have to say yes or no, just know that we would want a holistic approach to the entire pier that includes electrification for transport for the Blue Highway.
Yeah, I defer to Anton on that one.
Yeah, we want to support all of this, right? And the blue highway, that's also a green highway with, is ideal. And it's something that, we're looking at across is how do we electrify on the waterways as well. So we work with our operator and also the operators of the blue highway, what their fleet plans are, and we can, take that into the demand discussions. I mean, there's also electric bikes as well that need to be taken into account, and, maybe they're charged here, maybe they're charged somewhere else, but these are all, really appreciate you flagging this, and these are all, important considerations that we will have to work with, all our partners here, but also their partners, and from EDC, like all our other Blue Highway sites as well, as we look at this across the city.
So the last 2 things I had were a comment on the landing fees and the questions. Because when I look at, for example, the North Cove Marina is the most expensive docking on the East Coast. In the North America, it is the most expensive marina. When we're talking landing fees, where does the downtown heliport sit in comparison to others? Because that ends up turning around to be viability for, yes, it's expensive to start, but if there's not economies of scale, then it will always be, for example, the most expensive and not serve a wider public. We may not get Blue Highway transit in for everybody, just for an elite section. So where do you sit for landing fees in comparison to, for example, Pier 34?
In terms of the fees here for Blue Highway,
The fees for the entire pier.
for the entire, grid. So
You talked about landing fees.
Yeah.
And the incentivization of electric, but if it's still the most expensive heliport in the Northeast to land on, that limits your base.
yeah, I think we look at it as two separate kind of lines of business, the aviation side and the maritime side. So on the aviation side, is that what you're asking about both? Okay, so like this would be a decision for downtown Skyport and how to operate competitively in this environment. We're also, I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised to contemplate the idea of additional helicopters like in this discussion so far. So we've looked at the price points that kind of maximizes the revenue that these operators are getting, and that doesn't necessarily have to be more volume. It's a balance of price and volume.
Yeah, we're looking at alternate routes, not necessarily increase in volume. Right, so when you're looking at air taxi and connections versus tourism, finding the balance to work with that serves a wider group.
Yeah, so you're looking at different landing fees for different, I'm not sure I fully.
Well, if Pier 6 will be the most expensive pier to land on, whether you're by boat or by helicopter, then you innately create a different marketplace than the other piers around, the other landing spaces. You limit the opportunities of what kind of businesses and services you can have there, right? And that's the question I'm asking, is will it be the most expensive heliport
I don't think
that we have?
I think right now it's actually cheapest.
I was saying landing fee, I guess, basically landing can be both by air and by sea, and that's maybe where I was getting confused. So we have not gone to that level of detail in terms of, and downtown Skyport can chime on this more detail, with the delivery partners and the Blue Highway partners on what that compensation structure looks like, but hear your point loud and clear.
Yeah, great. And then, shucks, I forgot the last one. Right.
Thank you. It's been really interesting conversations. You had two of my favorite topics. I have a
I
question.
remembered it. It has to do with the accessibility for the Blue Highway to microtransit. The concerns that I wanted to bring up is the conversation that we had. The current bike lane that is there was designed and is designed for recreational users and city bike users. It is not designed for microtransit. If the microtransit is going on the road, that's certainly one thing and easier. But every time we add another usage to the bike lanes, what you are then creating is a street-like experience. And I just think of if I'm not a strong bike rider, am I gonna get on there? No, because now it's too dangerous for a regular rider. And there has to be a thought that EDC puts to who rides there and who doesn't.
Yeah, and we're working really closely with DOT and the Department of Parks on regulations for that specifically. Definitely don't want cargo bikes to be intersected with the greenways, for example.
Right.
They would be using the roadways, but yeah, whether that, whether it's bike lanes or roadways kind of depends a little bit on like the weight of and the size of the vehicle too. So yeah, since this is very nascent, that a lot of that is in development, but.
Also, to emphasize, we are
And I'm done.
operating we've conducted a city environmental quality review here as well, so all the volumes will be within that existing environmental review that was conducted 2 years ago.
Oh, yes, I'll make one comment. It's only for the Skyport people. How much have you been in conversation with other groups that are putting in EV tools, landing pads? Because I've heard that across from me, over in Jersey City, they're going to be putting in eVTOLs in what has been kind of an empty pier. It's just sitting there. And I'm kind of wondering how much that will affect flight patterns or anything else. And you would know more about that. So if you had any comments.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm answering your question. When I say the fact that we bring these global best practices means that we are able to learn from projects we're doing elsewhere around the world, very, very directly. Like the fact that we literally broke ground this week on a test vertiport outside of London, for example. That type of work that we do is how we sort of sharpen our expertise, but also informs our understanding of the cost and the best way to bring that technology to downtown Manhattan Heliport. So, we have direct experience with it, A, and then B, I think, we're very fortunate in that East 34th Street, as Anton mentioned, is going through a similar process of electrifying. We know the Atlantic Aviation team well, and I speak to them regularly. And we've already agreed that we can share learnings and best practices on the installation of the electric infrastructure in both ways, because we'll be going through the process pretty much in parallel.
I just wanted to be perfect for Jersey City, because that pier is just opposite with Pier 26.
Oh, the Jersey City ones at the Newport Helice.
Yes, so we really have not been involved in those conversations.
It would probably be good to get in touch with them and Linden.
So from the EDC perspective, actively in touch with all these stakeholders as well, especially on the New Jersey side. For helicopters today, these aircraft are coming, but we have helicopters today, and there are helicopters that don't necessarily that follow the same routes and hours that we talked about earlier. And so we're actively working with the FAA, with the helicopter industry groups, with other landing sites in New Jersey, to encourage them, maybe put a bit of pressure on them, or friendly competition to get them to follow our footsteps here, because that would be the best if they can follow our flight paths, or can encourage them to add these chargers, for example, on their sites
But
there.
right now, it's a vacant site.
Yeah, but if they could electrify that, and that's not a loud helicopter that's flying over, perfect. So that's what those are the conversations we want to keep having, and I think it's a very good sign that on the New Jersey side that they're waking up and doing this as well.
Well, thank you all. It's been fascinating, and I look forward to keep building out. That's my committee. I've been keeping up on Hill for a long time now. I find them fascinating. So I really look forward to that. And Blue Highways is my number one target, because we do need a lot more of the distribution of freight. And I do realize they're going to be on the roadway. They're going to be in the road lanes. So the 48 inches, they're not going to fit in the bike lane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Ready?
We got another hour left, at least.
Well,
We got a resolution, and this is about trying
Well,
to
here's-
tips and stuff.
It's not being negative. So I have a question for you. I have a question for y'all, because Monday is the public comment and the public hearing. Does CV1 want to submit any public comment based on what we've said around the table about ensuring electric or,
The high school. Okay.
anything else? That's the question I asked Sharon, when I asked, do we want to say anything and submit anything for public comment on Monday?
The review is essentially up or down, right? It's not like they're gonna
It's a public hearing. There is testimony that any group can
Right,
provide.
but it's not like the agreement's gonna be amended. It's either gonna be approved or.
It's red, no, because it's competitively procured. If you want to say something.
No, I mean, no, we would only say something if it was taken into account in any manner. But if it's just to be able to be heard, we've made our statements here.
Okay.
It sounds like it's the latter, yeah.
It's the letter.
Like we support it or not support it,
It doesn't make a difference. They're there. It's not, it's as of right.
It's nice to hear about.
Yeah.
I support it.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, she was asking
we all support it.
if we said something, would they take it into consideration? And it
What would-
sounds like they won't really.
The process is done.
Okay.
Because it's a different process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a moot point then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
my
not ripe, I think is.
question to you, Tammy, is do you want to vote on a resolution that basically says that we support it.
That's what I was asking. I mean, it's not up to me. It's not up to me, it's up to the group. And you know, my style is as chair, usually take the stand of say something, because if you say nothing, you lost your chance, right? You always say something. For me, this is a great opportunity that we can support electrification, greening the air is green, if it's actually green, so much of what Tess is saying. But I mean, you know, being on record to say that we would like to see more green, which we have done, and putting it out there, I don't think is a bad thing. But it's not really necessary
I
that,
think we do a resolution on the blue highways, so
Yeah.
we've kind of
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be the opposite, which is, we shouldn't say anything unless we have something to say.
we have said something, so what we
Yeah.
could do is, if Zach's a fast writer on this one, he could just say, you know, Community Board One has supported the electrification and the greening, you know, and supports electric, and are excited to hear about the lower hours and the cap remaining in place. And that's actually all good stuff and goes supportive of everything that we've said. It sounds like EDC is really on the same page. And since we are often critical of our relationship with EDC, I do think it might be a nice opportunity to be gracious.
So in fact, I did draft somewhat of a resolution going past the things that have been done. Know where this is going,
Yep.
which really concludes with therefore be it resolved that CB1 is excited to support the EDC and the Downtown Skyport LLC plan to bring quieter and less polluting air transportation and Needland Marine plus last mile delivery to the downtown Manhattan heliport at Pier 6, given the conditions set forth above. Which really is that they stick with the agreement of their timeline.
So you just have to say what the conditions set forth above were, and I think that that's something,
Seem to be timeline
yeah.
and keeping the cap on. I mean, those are the things. I want people to know what it is that's already been said.
Yeah.
How do people feel?
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
And then I was told it was moved.
no, I said not right necessarily.
Okay, I support
Yeah,
that.
wait.
The only thing I would add, Betty, is, and you might have it in there already, is like in the whereas is, linking to our previous, resolutions or something like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, it sounds like we are in agreement, and I'll call the question.
I'll second, because I agree with Mitch.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it was a very positive conversation,
Everybody in favor?
pretty much.
Any
Eric?
abstentions?
I don't see the point, so.
You're gonna
It's okay.
abstain.
Are you abstaining?
Yeah, abstaining.
Rosa, what are you doing?
She's not on
Abstain.
Just texting.
That too.
There we go. All right. Yeah.
Just to do,
Eight in favor,
You're in favor.
abstention, I voted.
okay,
Okay.
Chinatown.
Your resolution.
All right, let's roll. I'm gonna,
Fascinating.
I'm gonna borrow you.
Oh, yeah. Great, so we can move on to the other resolution, which we're all too tired to do last, but we're going to do this stuff because you did get to see it in advance, so hopefully you were more refreshed when you read it. And any comments you have to make?
I did the pre-read, I'm already.
Maybe it was just.
We might get out of here on time. Do we want to call the question? Are we ready? Do we need to read it or?
Comments? I did it's religiously from the last
Yeah.
And Eric was not at that meeting, but you can go back, you went and looked at the tape. It followed what was said at the tape, and it doesn't add anything from that as well, and it's consistent with the previous 3 resolutions. I spent a lot of time on it
Yeah,
to make sure that there were no inconsistencies.
I wasn't here when I watched them.
Yeah, no, I'm glad people did watch.
So I will call the question. Somebody want to second it?
Second.
Thank you.
Great, we'll do it by affirmation.
Oh.
So you sit here, a yes, unless you say no. You don't have, oh, it's not on the.
She's not on the committee, yeah.
She's.
We're at quorum without her.
Can you share the
Yeah,
resolution?
we don't need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we hold, can we pause?
Oh, yes, yeah, make it kind of, sure.
There's, I think there's a pause so that somebody can read the resolution. Okay.
let's take a second.
Gary, I didn't know you were highly inclined my mind.
So
I sent it to you today.
But not.
You know what I did see that was interesting? Not anything to do with this. I mean, no, I mean, it's like, I was looking at a 2004 Lower Manhattan Development Corporation study on traffic patterns. And they were talking about before Park Road was closed to private vehicles, there were 400 to 500 cars going through it per hour. So they were driving. This is an LMDC study, 75-page study.
Which year?
2004. Yeah, looking at like where did the question was, where did the traffic go? Yeah.
But wasn't there like a 2016 or something like that one time?
It was closed.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, so they were just, looking at traffic patterns per hour
Before that.
before it was closed.
Each university built up, so many things have changed since then that.
I mean, just that kind of
Yeah,
gave me caution.
yeah.
Well, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But as Casey said, when presenting last month, Kate can verify this. But they have calculated that there will be induced demand. And there will be people from outside the area who choose to come to Park Row to travel through. So they are expecting,
In cars.
yes,
And also,
there will be induced demand.
Right.
It is open to private vehicles and of course for hires.
they're anticipating, so much pedestrian traffic too, and the width of the sidewalks. I mean, I don't know, I was just reading it also, there's like Chinatown, the sidewalks are so crowded, and people often walk in the street to go around.
It's good for both Chinatown and FIDI.
yeah, that's more.
I do that.
Yeah, no, this is just.
So,
I did that today. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the question.
with the resolution.
I just,
My-
I want to bring that point up.
Yeah.
Remember at the community board meeting last month, I think it was, that, I forget, there was kind of a middle-aged Chinese lady that spoke very passionately about having to board the bus, walking out and felt,
That's included here.
so it was supporting kind of what she said?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's why, I didn't, I misread it because I thought it was kind of like glossing over that, but, yeah,
There's
she's.
concerns about the bus boarding island by the southeastern corner of Park Row Worth Street intersection needs to be addressed, including adding a shelter from the sun and rain, ensuring that a bus center is accessible to wheelchair users, and 3, adding measures to prevent pedestrian cyclist conflicts when bus riders cross the two-way bus lane to get to the bus island, which was her concern.
Is that the same woman who got hit?
She didn't say she was hit.
There's
She was-
something, she said she wanted to the bus
Everybody knows.
running by the curb. If I'm not mistaken.
But anyway, they also, the
Yeah.
SIP had not yet installed, Kate, what is the word for slowing people down?
Oh, rumble strips.
Rumble strips are being put in, and she wouldn't have seen them because they weren't installed yet at that time. But
They still are.
plans for doing some.
Okay, because
They still are not.
it was convincing and I
That's
kind
one
of
thing I wanted to speak
thought
to.
that she was very convincing. And
Yeah,
very,
no, and that is,
I was sympathetic to her feelings.
yes, no, that is in here.
Are rumble strips in the resolution that they should install them?
We don't need to, those are already planned in the SI, in the SIP, and I
Already.
limited to
Well,
just that. This, so we
I don't
ask that
know.
they need to address.
I can't tell you what it says. We're still looking into installing them for the request from the community board, line 3, and the community board. So, but
I had talked to the, people doing the survey,
You gotta get called on. so
and
we can-
I definitely asked for those rumble strips. And that was in summer when they were so-called taking the survey. I don't know what happened to the survey, but they sure didn't listen to me.
Well, no, they said that they're going to.
They haven't done it.
Yeah, yeah. So
But-
they-
But they
How- how could
reported
they
last
just
month,
say-
last month they said they were going to do it, so it is definitely in their plan.
Yeah, but they hurriedly, they did it in less than 2 weeks. They demolished an existing island in the middle of the street. Then they actually created the new island.
Yes.
They painted everything, all of the, white things.
Since you made it.
They look like it's 100% complete.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So,
It's
okay.
not, except it's still done.
But rumble strips could have been integrated while they were doing that. I don't understand.
What is the reason
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So the rumble strips weren't included in the original plan. That was something that came later and when we received community feedback. And I also just want to clarify that when DOT does a street improvement project, there are oftentimes short-term projects that we can do quickly with materials that we already have on hand. And because we're working on them with materials we have in our toolkit, we make adjustments to them when we get community feedback. Like I can think of other SIPs we've done in other community boards where we've installed additional signage or additional paint. But it just takes a little while because we are approaching the end of our SIP season, so we're doing work all throughout the city. And it's a matter of scheduling and getting it, but it's still on our radar.
Now, that's something that I have issue with. Someone already got injured because she was trying to get a bus that had stopped at this island. And you have to avoid traffic going both ways that you cannot hear. They're totally silent. I've been hit by a couple of these guys before, going the wrong way coming from behind. So I can see if you're going to get a bus, you won't necessarily see these guys going back and forth as you're trying to get the bus. Because your primary issue is, I want to get that bus before it leaves. Now, okay, I know this person, this individual who actually tripped and fell. She's 90 years old. My mother-in-law is over 90 years old. Dozens of residents in our 3 buildings of 400 apartments are over 80 years old. Me, I'm getting there. I'm only 69 years old. I can make it. But this is the height of the curb. 11 inches.
There is a ramp.
And I know, but you're gonna look for a ramp while you're trying to get on a bus? What if it's dark? What if there's snow on the ground?
But I have to.
But that's
not the curb.
No, that's not the baseline.
Problem. I appreciate the problem. You're dismissing the people like me who do have to look at those ramps. What I'm saying is I have a degenerative disease. I went through all the stages of being unable to walk.
I'm sorry to hear that, but
I did have to look, and unfortunately in the 90s, you do have to look because,
Sometimes you can't see anything.
well, that's true, but fear of falling is so huge with elders. And I can tell you as a therapist, my career in the last few years when I could walk was all elderly who fell and had huge injuries. So they have to learn to do it or they end up as one of my patients.
So are you agreeing with them? I can't actually tell.
No, I understand, I agree, and it's in here. It's something needs to be done. I don't want it limited to just rumble strips.
Right.
My rumble strips are in.
Well, it's not.
Wait, but some of the things that people consider, oh, take care of all these things, there shouldn't be anything, that they have to look for a ramp. There are people like me who always have to look for a ramp. I had to go down Murray Street today and hit on cars, but they didn't hit me because I couldn't get back on the sidewalk after a construction zone.
Mhm.
So I'm going through traffic. It's a very unfortunate reality, but it is a reality.
I'm sorry, I am very conscious of individuals like yourself. I actually wrote a paper as my thesis when I was going to college, because I'm an architect. I would never put, the curb that is 11 inches off the street. That is something very wrong with that, I have to say.
Also, the last meeting at CB3, we talked to Casey from DOT and we asked him, 11 inches is too high. He says, 11 inches is for the bus, for the kneeling bus. The only problem is that 11 inches is not where the bus goes. It's where the bike lane goes. So it's That 11 inches is entirely inappropriate for that height, for where that curve is. It's wrong.
And what are they? Why do you have kneeling buses? It's for people who can't go like this. It defeats the purpose. I don't understand that.
Let's,
Thank you, guys. We appreciate the feedback. Maybe we'll get to the resolution and see if the language is already addressed.
yeah, let's get.
I've got a question for Kate. So the bicycle situation, the bike lanes, all of that, like by the bus stop, like is there a traffic control for the bicycles so that when the bus stops, or is there some sort of thinking around improving this? Because we have, like, there's a, what is it, 606, is in city council, where it's, you know, legitimizing micromobility vehicles, and it seems like we need to change or adjust some of our traffic patterns and some of our, you know, overall infrastructure so that we can account for this kind of situation, because buses don't show up at like a regular time really, because traffic is so whatever. And if people are trying to run to catch the bus because it's unpredictable, it makes it really difficult for cyclists to be able to continue on their way in a predictable manner as well. Like nobody wants to get in an accident, right? Is there something that we can do to, you know, stop cyclists from moving? And then, you know, like have a stop sign when the bus stops or whatever, some sort of genius thing that you guys can think of.
That is a great suggestion. As of now, I don't think we have a signal change plan, but that is something we can bring back and see if we can make an adjustment. And also just want to add, for, again, the SIP projects, they're short-term and adjustable. So we hear that this has been the most controversial part of the SIP. And we're going to try to make adjustments to the bike lane, just to take suggestions like signal changes back, but also it can be adjusted in the future. If in the long run, if this ultimately, you know, if we hear enough that perhaps if this is an issue, we may make a change to the bus island down the line. But I just want to make that clear as well.
Okay, let's just let.
Safe now.
That's it.
Okay, I want to just 2 points. I'm sympathetic to the ramp, and I'm sympathetic to the not 11 inches. And I don't understand why it has to be an either or. They're not mutually exclusive. There definitely should be a ramp for people in any situation, but there also should not be 11 inches for this situation. And the other thing I just wanted to say, but what Katie just said, I'm just hoping that when you say we want to kind of monitor things, that it's not after somebody gets critically injured, then it gets changed, because there's some evidence now that there have been some incidents. So there should be both the ramp and not the 11 inches. And let's be proactive instead of waiting till something critical happens.
I know there were people online also who wanted to speak.
Well, and I waited really patiently.
Go ahead, Mitch.
And so I'm just hoping, and you guys are wonderful, but that not waiting till the worst thing happens before there's a change made. And I think both things are not mutually exclusive.
We were gonna include it in the resolution,
Thank you.
and Kate has said that she's heard us and they're willing to be flexible, so.
We're very flexible on that. I apologize.
So yes, I want to end the conversation here. There are 3 people with their hands up. I really don't want to hear what they have to say, but I
Betty, that is not how we operate as a CB. Thank you.
we want to do that to make comments, but the resolution is not going to change. But therefore, wait. Therefore, be it resolved, refer back to the issues that are cited in the whereases. So we'll listen to these people because we can make the modifications for whereases. But I want to, we're going to go on to the vote. But remember, the vote is really about, therefore be it resolved. So let's go on to Anna.
Will you hand that out? You have copies of it?
Yes.
We do now.
Oh, I've read it.
Yeah, we also did a reissue.
There can't be an amendment to say.
Anna, can you unmute?
Uh-oh, wait, are we still good?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're losing the screen.
We're losing the screen, but we don't need to put
It was
anything on the screen.
Top left.
Wasn't it just that we needed to hear the people online?
I think we can still do that.
Yeah.
It's still
She put her hand down. Jamie.
And I know it's there. If not, I can read what they emailed.
Dialogue. I do want to point out something very clear about the last time DOT heard this at CB3 with full understanding about the ramp. The ramp is not a ramp. The ramp is actually a pedestrian crosswalk. The bus does not align itself with the ramp. So what is aligned with where the bus stops is actually the little bench in front of Luna Pizza. So everyone waits by the little bench in front of Luna Pizza because most of them are using the bus, and a lot of people who have mobility issues will wait in front of Luna Pizza sitting on the bench. They then have to get up from the bench, walk down into the two-way bike lane, which has no signals to stop the bikers, and then climb an 11-inch curb, which is where the bus hopefully stops. So by the time, as Casey at DOT said, oh, if you have mobility challenges, just walk over to the crosswalk, they are actually quite far away. And so what we have noticed is that people are rushing to get on the bus because they've waited there a long time. I just want to make clear to you, this was never our intention to see an 11-inch high bus island because we asked as a community for this. So what we've done is we've worked with Transportation Alternatives, with AARP, and we convened a meeting at CCBA with community members to address this specific issue. We really implore you to listen to what we have concluded with Transportation Alternatives, who is about to help craft a dialogue around this. Because of our bringing to light what happened to Paula Chu, they are very much aware. AARP is working with Open Park Road Now Coalition. And I just want to give you this information that there is much more information coming, much more joint advocacy around this. This is not just a bunch of Chinese people from Chinatown complaining. It is really something that we don't want other bus islands to be installed without transparency. So we asked for this transparency in many community board meetings. No one knew this was going to be 11 inches high. No one knew that. And we asked the right questions. So we're advancing this to get more citywide advocacy on this issue because we really want to be concerned about our safety, but we want to bring it out to the wider public of all of New York City to not have bus islands that are installed this way. So I just want to give you that information. Thank you.
No, Jan.
Yes.
You need to tell us, if you need change to this, you need to say what your joint meeting with AARP and Transportation Alternatives resulted in. What is going to be said? I know we're jumping the gun, but this is our timing now. If we wait, then beyond today, the only day to add it to our resolution for CB1 will be as a friendly amendment on December 19th.
Well, or tell us where it's available online or something.
Right. I mean, so it's
fully understood. And we're also working with AARP scheduled, the CCBA, our group of advocates, and also with Transportation Alternatives. So I know that the timing does not align, but if we can get something to you before December 19th, we will surely try to do that. I know that there's a meeting that's coming up in a few days with the same group. So we're just very happy to be in the same room with people who are experts about transportation of all sorts.
okay. So what my suggestion.
Support that work.
Yeah.
Right, and so what we can do is add in a whereas that says we are aware that that those three groups, and Jan, can you tell us those three groups again?
It's Open Park Road Now Coalition.
Okay.
Transportation Alternatives. AARP. And CCBA.
Okay, so we can reference in the whereas, so we're prepared for it, that we understand that this group is meeting to find a alternative to the 11-inch.
Who is CP?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association. They are an umbrella organization of over 60 community groups.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have to spell out the names in the resolution.
Exactly, so we can add that as a whereas,
For the whereas.
I appreciate that very much.
I have language. Whereas the community has expressed concerns about the ramp location and curb height on the bus island and is working with the APRN Coalition, Transportation Alternatives, AARP, and the CCBA to determine alternatives and solutions. Next paragraph.
Well, yeah. I'll play with the wording a little bit, but again, I will listen to the tape like I usually do.
And can we make sure we put in the number 11 inches as a highlight, because that's going to be a statement point.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I have to send my notes, to everybody's notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
All right, anybody else?
Yes, there is, JVC. You'd like to unmute yourself? While waiting, if Catherine Freed would like to speak. Oh, sorry, JVC is unmuted, so.
Welcome, JDC.
Yes, hello. Hi, Howard, who is president of the meeting, has a photo of the woman's knees who was just injured, and it's in all the newspapers there. And the other thing with the island, it's too narrow. There was a proposition that we install seating and also shelter. That island is too narrow to put those things. So we don't want to throw good money after bad is another concern that I would have.
That's already in there, because in fact, it talks about a mobility scooter user. For people like me to be able to get around and into a shelter requires a certain amount of weight. So
Yes.
thank you for your concern, but that is included already.
Okay, good.
Jeannie, anything else?
I'm riding in the car, so I had difficulty hearing everything.
Off the phone
Or go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Catherine.
Catherine?
Aha, I'm unmuted. Hi. You can hear me, I take it.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what everyone else said, but there are several problems. Obviously, yes, we need that. We need the bus island reduced because it's not just Paul Chu who fell. People are tripping over that every day. They moved it off the old sidewalk where it's been for decades, because I used to use that stop all the time. And there was a shelter. There were benches for people to stay. They were right on the sidewalk. Now they've moved it off. They put 2-lane bike lanes between the sidewalk and the bus island. And I haven't seen any signals for that, because people have to dodge the bicycles and then try and get up on the island, which a lot of people can't make. If you're at all mobility impaired, it's a problem. And they really have to reconfigure it. As I think Jean just said, the bus island is too narrow to try and put a bus shelter on it or to put benches. There's just not enough room. So, and that's a major bus stop in the entire Chinatown area, and also the court system. Like I said, it was down the block from my chambers. And so the community board should tell them to just rethink it, think the whole thing, and be aware of the fact that we have, the whole area is a NORC, a naturally occurring retirement community. We have a substantial senior citizen population, and they simply can't negotiate that bus island. I think they should just put it back, and so that people can use the bus shelter, so they can use the benches. And so it's convenient. It worked for decades. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
We didn't give Kate an opportunity to say anything on the 11-inch.
Exactly.
Did you even know how that's legal?
I don't have anything to add on the curb size. I will say we are looking at installing a bus shelter at this location. It would be on the smaller side, but we are still looking into that, for that has been completely rolled out.
And seating as well?
We're, yeah, still being considered.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
It's only 8 feet wide. I think we're ready to call. I think.
Yes, I was like-
Eric? Yeah, thank you. I'm concerned that the SIP, the street improvements that were done, it precludes ever opening Park Road to the public using it. With that bus island extended, you have a bus stop in the travel lane. So basically, you can never have, vehicles, privately owned vehicles use it. Because it stops, it'll block traffic.
They just have to stop for the bus. It's like any other narrow street in Lower Manhattan, Eric. You just,
I respectfully disagree. They don't.
I guess that's a question for Kate.
Yeah,
Let's
they
have
don't
Kate
do
answer.
So we've publicly gone on the record a few times now, saying that the bus island is not going to preclude, the reopening, Park Road to private vehicles. Again, it's, like Kenny said, it is like a narrow street. When it were reopened, cars would be able to stop behind the bus, but additionally, as I've said, if there were a scenario where we decided to reopen Park Road to private vehicles and we decided that the bus island was a hindrance, it can be taken out. So we're not ruling anything out yet at this point.
Park Road is very wide. That's it's very wide, and now we're making it narrower, so we're saying, you're saying what, not you, pardon me, you don't know, but what's happening is, they're saying it's an option, but they're constricting the travel lane, so basically, unless they decide to, to chip the concrete and remove it, they're not gonna do that. That's my prediction, but, so my concern, that is my concern, that this is precluding the opening of Park Road. They're putting in all the parts that'll never open it.
Yeah, you can vote against the resolution. I can't see a resolution saying the DOT is lying to us when they say that it's possible, so.
So
Just to move forward with this,
I'm going to call the question second. Let's vote because it was actually called the question second 30 minutes ago. And we paused to let people read the resolution where we got this information 3 days ago. So let's talk about it.
And also, you're the public too, the public wanted to give.
I understand the public, but I'm just saying.
It's just the bike.
Okay. Do you want to call by, vote?
yes, this will be by extension, by, yes. Anyway, I don't need.
I'll explain.
Any nays?
I know why that's.
Okay.
Any abstentions? Any recusals? Then all the rest are yeses and it passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
You usually have additional slides.
We don't have a screen.
Zach can turn the screen around in front of him. You asked something?
Yeah, I want to make that on a DOT study. Can the community have time to review it? Have some time to review it when it does come out,
Yes, we already asked for that, yeah.
2009, we had a traffic engineer.
Yep.
Give an analysis that kind of give what DOT said.
Mitch, stop, please.
I thought we were finished. We don't have a community engineer right now.
So December 3rd was supposed to be the next Chinatown working group, and that got canceled. But at the last Chinatown working group and at a community board meeting, we have raised that there was an additional traffic study that had been done prior to the ones they're doing now, and officially requested that those be included in the presentations and follow-ups and considerations that DOT does. So we haven't heard back yet. I am going to go on record of being optimistic that before any other actions are taken in the next step process, we will have another update, correct?
We come back to,
Okay, and then, okay.
We went through a lawsuit and we had Park Road open to emergency vehicles and for some reason signage there precludes emergency vehicles from going down Park Road.
Park Row is supposed to allow emergency vehicles at all
They
times.
never go through. Oh, you like, they never go.
Ambulances, right?
Oh, they addressed that last time. They said because they don't want to, because it takes too long for them to raise the
The
horns.
ambulance, the
But they
ambulance
aren't
is
allowed
chosen to go around.
Yeah.
But that is a question that we can ask DOT to follow up with NYPD to figure out a way to make it a.
It's in the resolution.
Yeah, we talked about this last
It
month.
says to get.
Which we encourage
to-
everyone to read.
Use the YouTube.
The public didn't get a chance to, so. All right, that's our fault for not having it publicly online.
But we have
In
our
advance.
videos.
The gentleman over here said the one thing that he was concerned about are why there are giant stones.
That's also in the resolution.
I understand, but they didn't send the resolution out to the.
But it's in the
public.
resolution because we talked about it last month.
Right.
So I'm quickly telling them, these things, if they were done last month, they are certainly in there. If they aren't, if you give you concerns, I will tell you, and it is in the resolution.
But the stone appeared,
Yeah.
this huge stone appeared in the last week. They just put it there.
No, it's been there before.
No,
They
no.
are-
No, they did the bike lane and they put it on
Don't
there.
worry, it's not that kind of detail.
Okay.
They don't want to be intermodal or intermodal interference.
And what they're,
It is kind of
the
crazy.
stones are there to prevent cars from coming over and
But
parking.
some of them are in the middle of the pedestrian area, and I have a difficulty getting through. Full wheelchairs couldn't get through.
That's
So
right.
I'm very aware of them, and we've spoken about that, and it's certainly in the resolution, you know, whereas.
The car didn't park there, wouldn't it?
Well, this is nothing with cars, this is a pedestrian. It's-
Oh, they used to park on the sidewalks.
They do it with the bicycle stretches.
All right, Betty, I think you're up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So for the updates.
Read this.
we have a-
We have that thing in here.
Yeah, you just.
Okay. For those who want to know, yes, we are well behind on the New York City.
that
street
outside?
plan. And so this was an update, so, but yes, that's true, if you think the number of bike lanes, bus lanes from the 2019 law, yes, it's well behind. For the DOT, they did the charging pilot, if you remember, Alice was real interested in this one, especially when we didn't go through with the deliveries hub. The DOT, I can't see what that's.
It says this.
Then it has a success, and they are gonna look to be installing more, especially near, they talk about the housing projects, which I guess they're looking for where most of the deliveries to, or other people that have been problems with potential fires where they're located, to make it convenient for them. So it doesn't look like it's a concern in our district at this time, but I do want to talk about all the stuff they're putting on our sidewalks.
What's the source? Like, you didn't show, okay. So it's,
For this one is actually from Streets Blog.
the other one was also.
I think this is from the same.
Yes, that's on the same order. The Brooklyn Bridge, in September set a new monthly ridership record, 59% higher than last year, to know that there is still an increasing number of cyclists around on the Brooklyn Bridge. But it's true of all of them. And New York's EDC is really doing a lot for electrification, this is good. But anyway, Staten Island Ferry and New York City Ferry are testing the use of renewable diesel. Well, it's not gonna be electric, but they are doing their best to move toward lower emissions.
You mean biodiesel? Is that biodiesel?
Biodiesel, yeah, it's going to be less than, they acknowledge it's not electric, they don't have the capacity to do that with the thrust that's needed.
Is it gonna smell still though?
That's what Jess brought up.
Like, 'cause I feel like it's gonna, cause we get a lot of exhaust in my office building from the ferry when the wind blows just right, which seems to be very often. And it, yeah, I don't know. I mean, when you say it's cleaner, does that mean it will smell less, or do you mean that it's overall cleaner because it comes from plants?
There's less pollution in the air. However, what I can say about New York Waterway has switched over to the same sort of thing. And I live right next to the terminal. I don't smell any of that, so.
Did you smell before? Smell it?
Yes,
Okay.
with some of the diesel that I could. But anyway, so by all means, let us know, because that'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to
But
smell
I'm
things.
kind of hopeful because Hoboken Path Station is going to be closed for most of February, and I mean most of February. The closure plan, this is from the Port Authority, they'll be closed starting on Thursday, January 30th. at just about midnight until Tuesday, February 25th. That's really about the whole month. Other modes of transportation, New Jersey Transit and the ferry at that Hoboken station will still be functioning. It's simply the path. It's simply the Hoboken. It is very focused. They're doing critical track replacement and station rehabilitation work. But they are doing, they have some customer mitigations. You have to look online to see it close up. But the ferry crossings between Hoboken Terminal, 14, there will be other ways of getting either to the other path stations, so you can take those across. There are other methods. They're going to be cross honoring your tickets on New York ferries, New York Waterway. There are other options that you can use. There is an extension of the street fare moratorium for yet another year. Again, it applies only to new requests, not existing repeats. Congestion relief zone from the MTA website. It does begin on January 5th unless something comes up with the courts. Things can always change.
Yeah.
That's not.
They can't do a whole lot. They can't do a whole lot.
I mean, $9 is great.
But anyway,
That was $4.50.
there are the reduced amounts that have been announced widely and they're available to be seen widely. One of the things that interested me was they have reduced the amounts that go onto the taxis and Ubers and the app for hires. Because again, there was a congestion fee on top of the existing congestion fee that was never suspended for them. But that's also going to go into effect and has been reduced a bit for January 5th. So get ready for those rides to go up in time as well. A reminder from the MTA, please get your Easy Pass updated if it needs to be done because it is more expensive to pay by mail. So at least do it as cheaply as you can. Also, if you qualify for one of the exemptions, the disabled or any of the income-based ones, do make sure that you're filed with the MTA, that your license plate is recorded, and you can take advantage of those discounts.
What happens if you don't have a car? Are you,
You don't have a car, then you're like everyone else that doesn't have a car. They don't worry about it.
so you're gonna have to, if you live in a zone and, you know, sometimes you have to rent a car, borrow a car, get
Yeah,
around.
well, good luck.
That would be up to your.
Yeah, it doesn't affect,
The
yeah, it
rental
doesn't.
company,
What?
the rental company usually incurs those charges.
And
No,
then
they
sends
just
it.
on- they
Yeah,
just
they
on
pass it.
premium for you, just like the Easy Pass.
Right, so,
But I was gonna say that you probably still want to make sure you have an Easy Pass that you take with you, that at least will minimize those costs.
wait, so last time there was the issue of which government vehicles were gonna be exempted. Have we heard anything about that yet, or is
They
it
are.
still?
It still says that government-owned vehicles, owned and issued, which technically should not be placards. It would be
No, of course.
any emergency vehicle,
Yes.
it's emergency vehicles like ambulances and stuff like that don't count. But the city-owned vehicles would be like the Department of Sanitation trucks, the Department of Buildings, cars.
But, so last time they had to go through an application process, right? And I never ended up happening.
Yeah.
They had to like apply for certain, do we know if that's happening this time?
No, those things, none of those things were changed.
So they're,
Yeah.
So whatever they were before, they are now.
you'll
I
have to
just-
keep an eye on this. 'Cause,
I think for me, my one thing about this is it's not, I think they should have done a 0 period on the off hours to allow businesses to have deliveries without any additional fees. If you're really trying to drive traffic, then drive traffic with a 0, right? Because anything that the businesses, and no matter what you have to say, everyone already says it. The minute you add a tariff or any kind of additional charge, it is passed through the patron, period. Exactly like you got 100,000 for hire vehicles, which is insane on the roads. They're not paying for any of the congestion pricing. It's the people in the cars who are paying. So they have 0 incentive for anything in or out of the zones, right? And it's not like it's the vans which are grouping people and carpooling, they're one by ones. They're no different than a private vehicle. The only difference is you're penalizing the private vehicle for a for-hire vehicle. It's not actually necessarily that great.
Almost nothing is gonna be completely fair. If you're going to take a for-hire vehicle, your fees are going to be going up. Some would say that's fair because you're taking the vehicle for yourself, for your own convenience versus mass transit. If you are somebody with a disability, if you own a car, your license plate can be exempt. If I take a taxi, I pay the surge charge, I pay the charges for it. So nothing is completely fair along the way. So, I mean, that's something I just kind of live with. But anyway, what I thought might be interesting too, since I can't see what's on there. The same thing, great. To show that it was sort of interesting that we have the two that have the most people who drive into the zone.
City officials.
Dover census tract with high rates of car commuting into Manhattan.
City officials.
City and government.
Yes, hopefully the congestion pricing will ease it up, but this will be something for us to follow. Does it really do that or not really?
It won't
So otherwise, we could benefit. Well, they could still use the placard when they come in, but it's not gonna be, they're gonna still have to pay congestion pricing or put license plates on their car.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens. But anyway, this is a reminder to pay the discount, to make sure you're signed up for your discounts. And a change, since we're on cars and the bad news, in the minds of people who own cars. Just don't care. But the motor DMV has changed a lot of things, and I didn't see it in the news at all, so I was a little surprised to see this. They've added points to a driver's license after a conviction for intoxicated driving or aggravated unlicensed operation.
What was the first thing you
Should have points, I mean, it was insane.
Debbie, I didn't hear the first thing you said, added points to what?
Drivers.
Driving DUIs.
Okay.
Well, exactly, they're very reasonable, before they weren't. Now you get points, and you're gonna get 11 points under the new guidelines that went into effect earlier this month, so they are in.
Yeah.
Maybe they should send that to every college upstate.
Yeah.
Officials also increased the amount of points that drivers earn for other convictions. 8 points for passing a stopped school bus,
Oh, yeah.
which is up from 5. 5 points for the scene of an injury causing crash, up from 3. 5 points for failure to execute care, up from 2, which used to often be the only way they could stop people who killed a cyclist or a pedestrian. So I'm glad it at least went up to 5 points. A conviction for drag racing previously had no points, now has 5.
Yeah, well, can we get anybody actually, I mean, there's drag racing all over Lower Manhattan, that's what they,
But you should enforce it, I know, that's a whole.
there's no enforcement.
Now, at least there are points, but.
Weird.
Are there
West Street.
Oh,
No,
West
those
Street,
highways.
insane. Yeah.
Like how,
Yeah.
And then
No,
did you
they're
go
not
up to Battery Park?
With speed bumps, That was,
Yeah.
You're okay, can you go to speed bumps? for us?
most speed bumps.
rumble strips.
That's the old method. to do it with us.
Rumbles.
No, I know, but.
Yeah, that's West Street.
Is this something that's on the DMV's official threshold? So again, this also changed the judge suspending a driver's license at exactly 11 points. The new rule expands the window from 18 months to 24 months of accumulation that would count. Under the new rules, the DMV now requires drivers with 11 points or more in a 24-month period or 9 points related to speeding in a 24-month period to attend a hearing that could suspend their license. So yes, it is a new level of accountability.
But it's enforced.
Well, again, enforcement is still have been, but before, even when it was enforced, after accidents and big things, the police, there was nothing they could really do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really the judges could do.
The only thing that I think is sad is that I didn't see anything unless I missed it about the ghost plates and the fake plates and like,
They keep saying they're gonna enforce it, but I don't see any real change.
but but like, what are their consequences?
So I'm looking for the person's contact information because Jess and I were talking about this enforcement issue. There's a group in the mayor's office that was doing a sweep up in the Bronx for ghost plates. And I happened to meet him and asked them to consider doing one in the first precinct area.
We'll take it everywhere, over the first and the fifth,
I need to
because
find the guy's, contact
Canal
information.
Street, Canal Street is
Our block
huge.
image, get it.
Yeah, I mean, we all know the places. The question is like finding the person whose task it is to do the enforcement. Because that's the relationship we need to
Isn't the
build.
first precinct coming this month? The
To
new
quality
of life,
Yeah.
Maybe we can ask them.
We can, and you can ask at the community council meeting, which is Monday, but, you know, at the end of the day, there's none of these are valuable unless the rules are enforced.
Right.
Right, so that's why it's important to know the people who are doing the work.
Maybe we can ask
Right,
Robin.
your point's well taken. Again, there is some rationale and consequences are going up, but again, if no one's enforcing it, doesn't matter.
It's just.
And that's to say, New Yorkers are really all bad drivers. It's been quite interesting too. Recently in the news, the odds of flunking a test in the city have risen. More than half the people who took their tests in Brooklyn or Queens flunked. More than half. The best was actually Staten Island, and they were still pretty pathetic. But the whole fail rate for the city is 48%. 48%.
But Betty, why is this all anti-drivers? I mean.
Well, no, but they're not.
You're you're anti-pedestrian.
It's because the cyclists and micromobility people don't have to take a test. They just get to use the roads all willy-nilly.
Yes.
No, because I tend to group things together, because when I get to the automotive, the
We're gonna get to
automated
the
driving.
autos.
I put them together too.
There ain't.
And by the way, part of this is because having done driving, it is so, you get, driver's ed is part of like a high school curriculum in a lot of places in the state,
Same here.
right?
Not in the city.
Not in New York City. There's,
And not
Even
in Texas.
can't drive until you're.
Take a step.
you got a permit a year later.
Right, New York City. Oh, no, y'all, because they can't hear us online, and that's the whole reason why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Eric, it's also freaky that this all came within the news in the last couple of weeks. Like, why all of a sudden the focus in the news? I have no.
What
idea.
news is this? What source is this?
It's been all over the
It's
news
been all,
recently.
it's been multiple
Weird.
sources.
It's,
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's been in Gotham, I mean, it's been all over.
Because one report on
I
it,
believe this was.
everyone else reported.
Yes, clickbait.
what is never?
The Port Authority is now putting automated vehicles, not just in JFK, but they're also gonna be at Newark Airport. So some expansion within us. I'm really into autonomous vehicles. There's a lot this month too. Autonomous vehicles in New York City, again, the DOT encourages innovation. They're the ones that control the permits that allow these various licensing. In fact, there are 5 Chinese companies working on their autonomic vehicles in New York City. So they're gonna know more about New York City streets than most Americans do. They're kind of interesting. The Brooklyn Navy Yard has taken on one of those permits, and they have an expression of interest out for a pilot they want to run around the Brooklyn Navy Yard. In fact, what's interesting about them is they are also going to gain insights. So it's a pilot program about technology and how it can enhance transportation within and beyond the yard. They're talking about their vehicles are going to go out to local MTA stations so they can pick up the subway or if there is to link. But it sounds like they're going to be looking at branching out. So it's going to be quite interesting to follow these things, and I think we're going to have to go. Lyft, in fact, has teamed up with May Mobility and Nexar to bring autonomous vehicles to their app, not in New York City. Nevertheless, as you're traveling, you're going to see it. That's how common.
I'm never riding.
Well, let's wait.
Big in San Francisco.
You'll see some of that. Tesla stock went up a lot when Trump is going to relax US self-driving rules. Again, promoted again by Elon Musk, brought it up first. So we may see a real surge occurring, especially after Trump takes office. Because it's going to be worked out at the federal level.
Not riding a bicycle or a motorcycle in the city anymore.
It may be safer, you don't know. I have information about that too. Waymo opens a robo-taxi service to all in San Francisco. It used to be just for their own employees, and then they branched out to some other people. Now it is openly available in San Francisco, and this is where places like Uber is going to see option to take. In fact, you'll see the service operates in Phoenix, also limited capacity in Los Angeles and Austin, Texas. Now, going to any of these cities, you're going to see much more on the road. In fact, I just saw a thing that Ann Arbor, Michigan is now my alma mater. They are now putting autonomous vehicles on the road. Yeah.
I'll take it when the.
Pittsburgh is a hub for this. I'll take it when you want it.
They had a couple, actually,
They've had a couple.
They had a-
Compared to outside of it. But anyway, this leads to my next one. Waymo has compiled the largest ever data set on pedestrian and cyclist injuries. They took the look at it and said, look at all the cameras we have around our vehicles. Look at all the data we have within our vehicles. Keep in mind, you have no idea how much data is out there and floating around. Anyway, they are going to use it because Google is part of Waymo, for those who don't understand the connection. They are looking to see, they are analyzing their data. And they have now, they're getting great detail because they are hoping to make autonomous safer. But again, that's very self-serving because that also would make them premier and safer than vehicles driven by individuals out there. So it'll be kind of interesting as it gets more known. Nevertheless, the database is coming out and actually it's quite safe. So you can talk about the one or two that make the news, but in reality, it's a lot safer than horrific accidents outside.
I'll leave that.
How is it, how many, like percentage wise?
Cities, those who want to see the data.
Well, what's the percentage wise? And you're saying that it's better.
The numbers are minuscule in the audit.
These are not percentage.
I think the answer to your question is that she does not have answers.
The open data set.
Yeah, because if you saying that it's like so much safer than something that already has like hundreds of millions of vehicles.
Right.
When there's maybe like 4,000.
Right, so the metrics not.
It doesn't align.
Anyway.
So,
Point taken. Next up.
Point taken. For those who are expecting to be killed on the road, that's not what's being experienced in other cities like San Francisco, which is why they've opened it to the public.
They also shut it down right after it opened up last year.
Yeah.
Because somebody was killed.
One person. You want to see how many were killed in New York City?
How many people?
That's not.
Can we move along?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of ways to interpret data.
Yeah.
And not everyone's gonna agree, so let's just move on.
Yeah, we're not going.
Interesting, it's out there and it's going to be growing.
Yeah.
Anyway. Again, noting again that the changes with electric batteries make cars heavier, that makes them deadlier as well. And there are more EVs, more SUVs, which have an impact higher up by the shoulders and head area versus down low on the legs where people kind of tumble onto the hood of the car. Again, these things have all contributed to way more serious injuries and more deaths per crash.
Okay.
Autonomous vehicles and motor learning, again, this is a person who deals, he used to be the head of the TLC, in fact, for many years. And he is now in a legal practice that works with it, kind of interesting, looking at the new technologies and where I think we're going to be moving with what he predicts is machine learning as well as interesting. As well as automated vehicles are really going to be the big growth areas that are going on in transportation in the near future.
Can we just build some subway stations for Christ's sake?
Well, we have those, but there wasn't a lot of subway news this month, I'm sorry. But there was Staten Island Ferry news, and yes, Duncan is coming to two of the, but for those who like to eat, and beer is coming as well, but who knows why they're related, I mean, it is.
Just coffee in the morning and a beer on the way home.
There wasn't beer?
Or beer in both directions. Stop with Coke.
Yeah.
My God.
You didn't lose.
Well, I stopped taking the Staten Island.
Yeah, well, they're coming back soon. Holiday season in New York City can be magical. Dealing with the gridlock is not. It's kind of interesting, this is the Gothamist. a list from the DOT of where we're going to have gridlock days. And remember, these are 25% more expensive for congestion pricing, if you recall that little rule. Just so people keep that in mind as well.
What am I looking at?
Even that, these are the days that are gridlock alert days that the DOT has on their website.
Yeah.
It would be surged to 25%.
There's,
Yeah.
see, but I have an issue with this. I have an absolute issue with that because gridlock, the gridlock alerts, we are not the midtown location where it's gridlock. You can go around here and there's no traffic downtown.
Surge, if they only surge midtown, they're gonna come through our bridges and.
They're not. You're still going,
I mean,
they're still doing it anyway.
you have to go down here.
That's not
They can't,
true.
they can't separate and restrict.
That's, I think that's part of, I really don't think that we should be part of the central business
And you
district.
search in Texas and it ends up being like $28.
Well, anyway, a reminder, because for those
And they
of you story about the
They
Gilligan,
can surge north of 14th Street.
And you can't budget.
There's no reason not to. I'm sorry.
Going?
This is the idea. That's why.
Okay. Anyway, moving on to Christmas too, for nostalgia rides, for those who like to do that. Keep in mind, on Sundays, there will be the holiday train.
Just
Sundays? Just
Yeah,
Sundays.
just so nice.
Yeah, take it
outside.
So I want to remind you.
No, but when y'all talk, please go mute online. Okay, we're trying to get through this.
Yes, and this is.
I'm not yelling at you, I'm saying take it outside.
Right. And New York City Ferries also has their thing with looking, for people who are building on mass transit where they can do some holiday celebration kinds of things. By all means, look there. And yes, believe it or not, we are ready to leave from 24 to 25 as a committee. It's due in January. That's our next meeting as a committee. Hard to believe. Another year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other
I,
transportation.
I'd love to see in 25, us really take a look at what they're proposing for what fits on a sidewalk and what doesn't fit on the sidewalk. And when you look at the open dining, I don't, we have had a summer of it now. We'll have next year, but I do think that there needs to be a conversation we have and maybe bringing in some of the accessible advocacy groups about redefining clear path.
Well, why don't we talk about widening sidewalks?